Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
The rest of the day? Unpleasant, to say the least. But for Max, it was at least bearable. Maybe that was thanks to what had gone down in the cafeteria. After something that loud and humiliating, everything else felt like a step down. The name-calling, the shoulder checks in the hallway, the muttered insults, it all kind of blended together. But Max couldn't shake a thought. This was just one day for me. One day, and it's already draining. How much worse must it be for the real Max? Or for guys like Sam, living this on repeat every single day? How do they even keep going? He thought back to his own teenage years. Rough around the edges, sure. He'd been a rule breaker, didn't take orders, stirred up trouble when he had to. But he never messed with people just for fun. Not like these kids did. There was no shame in it for them. No line they wouldn't cross. It's like they treat cruelty as a hobby. By the time the final bell rang, Max was more than ready to call it a day. He slung his bag over his shoulder and made his way toward the school gates, where Sam was already waiting. "Hey," Sam said, slightly out of breath. "Thanks again for today. For, everything. I'll pay you back for the food." Max waved him off. "Seriously, don't worry about it. I really don't need the money." Sam looked like he wanted to argue, but just smiled instead. "Well, if I can't pay you back with cash, then I'll just take a few punches for you, or something." With that, he took off down the street, already jogging away. Max stood there, watching him go, shaking his head. He's a good kid, Max muttered to himself, thinking about Sam. But with the way things are, unless he stands up for himself, he's always going to be a target. Wouldn't hurt if he hit the gym a few times. Might give him a little more confidence, too. That thought reminded Max of where he was headed next. The gym. If he wanted to get this body into shape, he had to be consistent. No skipping out. No excuses. And since it wasn't like he had a packed social calendar or any friends at all, really, it made sense to go straight after school. Besides, if he did have any old friends, meeting them now would only raise more questions he couldn't answer. He shot Steven a quick text to make sure the gym was open. By the time Max arrived, Steven was already waiting out front, flipping through something on his phone. Max took one look and squinted. "Wait, did you get a haircut?" "And the beard's gone too." Steven grinned, rubbing his now smooth jaw. "Yeah, figured I could treat myself a little." Then he muttered under his breath, "Might all go back to how it was if I'm not careful." Max didn't press him. He already knew the guy was on edge about the gym's future. "I'm going to start leaving a change of clothes here," Max said, walking past him. "Just make sure the bills are covered with the payment I send. Keep this place open. That's more than enough for me." Steven gave a nod, trying to hide the smile creeping onto his face. Just like the day before, Max was back in the gym and back on the weights, this time focusing on a different muscle group. His routine was solid, purposeful. Every rep counted. Meanwhile, Steven leaned on the front desk, his arms folded, pretending to scroll through his phone while watching the teen out of the corner of his eye. "I couldn't find a single thing about this kid," Steven thought. "At first, I figured I'd been scammed. Took a risk and got a haircut with the money before it cleared. But sure enough, it all went through." He had even tried to do some light digging. Typed in the number, got nothing. Tried red-haired rich teenager, also nothing. Not that I was expecting much with that search, but still. Even though things were looking up for him financially, Steven couldn't help but daydream about more. About what this gym could be. He pictured the sound of gloves pounding against bags, students sparring in the ring, laughter and sweat in the air. He imagined rows of teenagers pushing themselves, working hard, growing stronger. Instead, it was quiet, empty, just him and Max. And that's when he noticed something new. Max had picked up a pair of gloves and was walking over to one of the heavy bags. Huh, he didn't do this yesterday, Steven thought, his pulse picking up just a little. He kept his eyes locked, watching carefully as Max threw a few warm-up jabs and began to find a rhythm. To Steven's surprise, the kid wasn't bad. Not bad at all. Weird. He's got no real frame. Doesn't look like he's played a single sport his life, but those punches... Max moved like someone who'd been in a ring before. It wasn't just random punches. Steven kept watching as Max threw clean combinations on the heavy bag. He wasn't just flailing his fist around. He mixed in jabs, crosses, hooks, even a few uppercuts, weaving side to side like he was imagining a real opponent in front of him. Then, just as the pressure and pace picked up, Max suddenly stopped. That had to be about 3 minutes, Stephen thought. Did he just time himself like it was a real boxing round? Max stepped back, took a breather for about a minute, then went right back to the bag again. Same intensity, same focus. Yeah, I'm sure of it now. The weight training, the combos, the pacing, he's done this before. Not just once or twice, either. It's like I'm watching someone who's been doing this for years. He's got experience, maybe even serious experience. The technique's not perfect, and the strength could use work, but still. Just what is this kid's story? When Max finally paused again, Stephen couldn't hold it in anymore. He stood up from behind the desk. Hey, have you boxed before? Stephen asked. Max shrugged. I've done my fair share here and there, he replied casually. Nothing professional or anything, but some people might say I've got more experience than most. Stephen just stared. The way Max was moving, the things he said, it didn't match up at all with how he looked. Then Max turned to him, rolling out his shoulders. You mind grabbing the pads? He asked. I've got a lot on my mind today. Need to punch it out. Stephen didn't mind one bit. Holding the mitts for someone wasn't just about catching punches. It actually took a lot of skill. Training someone like this, working combos, reacting at just the right time. This was exactly what Stephen had dreamed of doing when he first opened the gym. He positioned the mitts in just the right spots, the kind of places a fighter would want to land a clean hit to do real damage. Each time Max threw a punch, Stephen moved the mitt forward ever so slightly to meet the strike, each one landing with a sharp, satisfying thwack. They kept going at it, and what impressed Stephen most wasn't just Max's technique, it was his mindset. Max didn't stop pushing himself, even when it was clear he was exhausted. But the most intense part? That look in his eyes, like he was fighting off something much bigger than just a punching bag. When they finally wrapped things up, Stephen let his arms drop to his sides, still catching his breath from the pace. With the skills you've got, you could go all the way. You could be a world champion. Stephen suddenly yelled, eyes wide with excitement. I'm serious. Let's make you a world champion. World champion? Max repeated, breathing hard as he peeled the gloves off his hands. No thanks. I'm not interested in that. And just like that, all of Stephen's hopes and dreams seemed to crash into the mat. What do you mean? Stephen asked, baffled. Think about it. Being a world champion means prestige. Your name in lights, in history books. You'd be remembered forever. And don't forget the money. You'd be set for life. For Max, none of those things, fame, glory, money, mattered to him at all. He already had more than enough wealth. His life was already hanging by a thread, surrounded by danger at every turn. The last thing he needed was more attention. All he really wanted was to get to the truth. Then why are you here? Stephen asked, confused. Why train like this every day? And how can you just throw away your natural talent? Even if your technique isn't perfect, the way you shift your weight into your punches, man, someone your size shouldn't hit that hard, but you do. It wasn't the first time Max had heard something like that. A lot of people he'd fought in the past had said the exact same thing, usually after they were picking themselves up off the floor. I'm not doing this for some big reason, Max replied, already halfway out the gym. Look, I don't ask for much, all right? Just keep your phone close in case I need you. Damn it. Damn it. Stephen yelled, frustration boiling over as he spun and launched a heavy kick straight into one of the hanging bags. It swung wildly, chains rattling as the weight shifted with the force of the blow. Max heard the loud thud and turned his head back. Through the window, he caught sight of the heavy bag swinging like crazy. It was a powerful kick, more force than most could manage, and right then, an idea started to form in his mind. How much? Max asked. Stephen blinked in surprise. How much? You're already paying me. What are you asking for? The price of title. You interested in going pro after all? His smile crept back onto his face with a hint of excitement. But Max didn't smile. He stayed still, his eyes serious. No, Max replied. How much would it cost to pay you to take care of someone for me? Stephen stuck his little finger in his ear and twisted, half convinced he'd misheard. Wait, what did you just say? Did you seriously ask me to take care of someone? Max didn't flinch. He just stared straight ahead, eyes locked on Steven, waiting for a response. Hey, you got to be careful with how you say stuff like that, Steven muttered, glancing around the empty gym out of instinct. You say something like that, and it almost sounds like you want me to... He lowered his voice. Kill someone. That made Max laugh, and not a little chuckle either. Full-on laughter that echoed through the gym. Given the context, it made him seem completely unhinged. No, I'm not asking you to go that far, Max said as the laughter faded. I just want you to rough someone up a bit. A few solid hits here and there, someone from my school. Steven's brows drew together. You want me to beat up a kid? He shook his head. Based on what he'd seen of Max so far, the request didn't really add up. The kid could clearly handle himself. Still, Steven had a few guesses. Maybe Max was being bullied at school, and this was his way of fighting back. But if that was true, then who the hell were these bullies? I'm sorry. I don't think I can do it, Steven finally said, shaking his head. Beating up someone I don't even know? Someone I've got no personal issue with? That's just not who I am. And besides, we're talking about a teenager. A 17-year-old kid. I don't think I could go through with something like that. Max gave a small nod. He'd gotten the answer he was looking for. Not disappointed, not surprised. If anything, he'd just been curious. Curious to see what someone like Steven, with real skill, might say when faced with a situation like that. Because Max wasn't just thinking about today. He was thinking about the future, about the White Tiger Gang, about going up against the very empire he had built from the ground up. It was a force too large to take on alone. And Max didn't have the luxury of time to build deep, meaningful relationships. Not anymore. So, instead, he wanted to test something. Just how far can money really take me? After all, you said money is what rules the world. That's why I was betrayed, right? With those thoughts, Max slid his hands into his pockets and turned away. Steven, still watching him, felt his phone buzz. Then again, and again, notifications lit up the screen. Several messages from different people and companies, all popping up in quick succession. Your loan is overdue. Your debt has gone into collections. If you don't pay us back, you know what will happen to you. Steven stared at the screen, his grip on the phone tightening. Slowly, his eyes lifted toward Max, who was just about to walk out the gym doors. But, Steven suddenly shouted, it depends how high. After all, there's a price for everything. Max didn't even glance back. He kept walking, a small smile creeping onto his face. There sure is. Steven stood frozen in the middle of his empty gym. Wait, he's not even going to make an offer? Was that all just a mess with my head? When Max finally returned home, he pulled out his phone and started reviewing the information he had gathered so far, trying to piece together the fragments of Max Stern's life. He was looking for patterns, connections, anything that would help him make sense of why things had turned out the way they did. He had met a few people now, but none of them explained everything. So far, I've only managed to find one person from the list, and I know the moment I act, things will spiral. It'll get messy fast. I need to find more names before I do anything, at least until this body is strong enough to handle what's coming. The next day arrived, and Max was back at school, the dreaded place that twisted Max Stern's life. As soon as he walked into the classroom, his eyes locked onto Sam. He'd been pushed to the back of the room. Again, Joe and Mo each held a permanent black marker in their hands, scrawling all over Sam's white school shirt. They were mostly drawing two balls and a long shaft, thinking they were absolutely hilarious. At least Co thought so. He was doubled over at his desk, laughing loudly. Huh, what a perfect canvas. Honestly, I'd say we just increased the value of your shirt by 50%, Co mocked. Tears welled up in Sam's eyes. He didn't cry out loud, but it was clear how much this hurt him. He knew neither he nor his family could afford a new uniform. Is Piggy upset? Co taunted. What's the matter? They don't make shirts big enough in your size. He then turned to look behind him, his eyes landing on Max, who had just entered the classroom. Joe, I think we need a fresh canvas, don't you? Co grinned. Joe didn't hesitate. He strolled toward Max, reaching out to grab a fistful of his shirt, just like always. But this time, Max slapped the hand away without thinking. Don't touch me, Max snapped. Joe blinked, stunned. What the hell? Did you just talk back to me? And knock my hand away? Damn it, Max thought. I acted on instinct. I only just walked in, and I already slipped. That's exactly what I would have done before. Crap, I can't act now. Not in front of everyone. Aren't you going to say anything? Joe shouted before slamming a kick straight into Max's stomach. The impact knocked the air out of him as he crumpled to his knees. Without a pause, Joe grabbed Max by the hair, yanking him up and dragging him across the classroom floor. Did you not hear what Coase said? You two are our servants. You don't get to defy us. With that, he flung Max across the room, releasing his grip. Max slammed into the back wall. Slowly, Max brushed off the dirt from his uniform and moved to stand beside Sam again. What the hell is that? Coase said from his seat, squinting toward the back of the classroom. What the fuck is that look on your face? Right now, Max was doing everything he could to restrain himself. Every fiber in his body screamed to act, but he knew if he snapped now, everything he'd built up could come crashing down. Still, his fury was written all over his face as he glared at the three of them. Looks like we've got a defiant one, Coase sneered. You know, we've been going a little easy on Sam lately. Maybe you forgot your place. Joe, how about we remind him with something special? A beating so bad, he'll wish he was in hell. All right, follow me, Joe said, both hands stuffed casually in his pockets. And if you don't, I'll make you walk the whole way barefoot. All of this was happening because of one mistake. Max had spoken up too soon. His plan had been simple. Go along with these losers, blend in, and then start digging for information. Maybe snoop around the school library or the teacher's lounge to find any more names that were on the list. But now, he was stuck in this situation instead. Trying to fix his misstep, Max followed Joe willingly. I'll just take whatever beating he's got planned, Max thought. Get over with, then come back and get back on track. As Joe passed Co and Mo, the three of them exchanged smug smiles. Not long after, the other two got up and left the classroom as well. Man, I gotta take a leak before first period, Co said, stretching his arms. Shame I can't watch what's about to go down, but I really can't afford to be late again. Mo followed behind him, both of them heading in the opposite direction from where Joe had taken Max. They were laughing like nothing had happened, while back in the classroom, Sam sat frozen at his desk, anxiously biting his nail. Crap, this can't be good. Sam panicked internally. If they're taking him outside, it means whatever they're planning to do, they really don't want the teachers or other students to see. And the teacher hasn't even arrived yet. I can't tell anyone. Nervously biting at his nail, Sam eventually sank into his seat, eyes drifting to the clock. His thoughts were racing, wondering what Max might be going through right now. He just got out of the hospital. There's no way he's in good shape already. What if they go too far this time? Worse than before? Sam squeezed his eyes shut, his fists tightening on the desk. But if I get involved, they'll just make my life even worse. It's already bad enough. Why does this always happen to me? As both of Sam's hands trembled on top of the desk, a memory hit him. Max, standing there in the cafeteria, paying for everyone's food without hesitation. The way he spoke to him like a real friend, like someone who actually cared. He said I didn't have to worry about it, that he'd take care of it. I said that I would repay him for that favor. Sam stood up suddenly, pushing his chair back. I have to at least do this, he whispered to himself. Without wasting another second, he rushed out of the classroom and sprinted through the hallway, searching desperately for a teacher, any adult who could help. But so far, there was no one. Meanwhile, both Co and Mo were casually walking back from the toilets. Hey, was that Sam just now? Looked like he was running out, Mo said, glancing over his shoulder. Yeah, Co replied with a smug grin. Maybe he finally decided to run home and never come back to school. One less loser to deal with. You don't think he's, gonna tell a teacher or something? Mo asked, a bit of unease creeping into his voice. Co scoffed. Don't be stupid. He tried that once, remember? Got smacked so hard he was too scared to even talk after that. He's not gonna try it again. We warned him what would happen next time. At the same time, Sam was racing through the hallways, his breath coming fast and shallow. He'd passed a few teachers, but for some reason, his legs froze every time he got close. Why can't I say anything? Why won't the words come out? His hands trembled at his sides. His whole body was on edge. But then, he spotted someone. Someone he knew might actually do something. "Abby," Sam shouted as he ran up to her. Abby turned, startled. "Oh, hey, Sam. What's wrong? You look— Wait, did something happen?" Sam nodded, breathless. "It's Max. I think he's in trouble." Following Joe, Max soon realized they were heading outside. Most of the students had already returned to their classrooms. The bell for first period was about to ring any second. Not that being late was Max's biggest concern right now. Joe led him to the music storage building, a smaller structure detached from the main school. It was a place rarely visited unless someone needed to fetch or return instruments or equipment. "Hurry up," Joe barked, pointing inside. Max stepped forward, and without warning, a hard kick slammed into his back, sending him stumbling into the room. The door slammed shut behind them. "You're still acting tough, huh? Still not listening?" Joe growled. He grabbed Max by the hair and yanked his head back before delivering a sharp slap across his face. Max's body swung with the impact before crashing to the side. Joe laughed. "I can't believe people like you and Sam exist. It's pathetic, but I guess it's just the food chain everyone talks about. And we're at the top." "You think you're the top?" Max thought as he steadied himself. "Just how small is your world to believe something like that?" Max remained on the ground, pretending to be more hurt than he was. He kept his breathing shallow, his head lowered, waiting. Joe strutted forward, swept his leg back, and drove a brutal kick into Max's stomach. "Co told me to make sure you remember your place," Joe shouted, delivering another kick just as hard. "Just take it, Max. Just take it. Remember, this is what the real Max Stern endured." He had half your strength and no way out, Max reminded himself. Joe crouched down, pulled off one of his shoes, then peeled off his sock and tossed it beside Max. Then, with a wide, disgusting grin, he raised his bare foot and pressed it near Max's face. "Remember, you and Sam are our servants," Joe sneered. "So do what you're told. Now suck it." He burst into laughter, keeping his foot hovering, wiggling his toes with sick delight. "Come on, suck it. Suck it. You're my slave," he shouted again, louder this time. Max kept his head low, staring at the ground, but his body was trembling, not with fear but restraint. Joe's laughter faded into irritation. "TCH, I guess you haven't learned your lesson after all." He swung his foot, aiming straight for Max's face, but never landed. Max's hand shot up like a viper, catching Joe's foot midair, stopping it cold. "What the?" Joe gasped. "I give up," Max said calmly, still not looking up. Joe smirked, thinking he'd finally won. "Haha, so you're finally going to suck." "I give up." Playing along, Max interrupted, his voice cold and deadly. He looked up slowly, eyes burning with fury. The mask was off. He had snapped. Throughout the constant barrage from Joe, Max had been repeating the same thing in his mind. Just get through the day. Just live his life. This is Max Stern's life now, and if he could survive it, so can I. But all of that vanished the moment Joe crossed the final line. Max couldn't take it anymore. The anger, the humiliation, everything he had bottled up exploded to the surface. The moment he caught Joe's foot, there was no going back. With a firm push, Max flung Joe backward. He stumbled, barely catching himself before hitting the floor. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Joe shouted. Max stood tall, his chest rising and falling with each breath. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, the small cut Joe had given him, and his glare was cold, focused. "You think I'm scared of you?" Max said, his voice low but steady. "You think anyone with half a spine would be afraid of you? You should have listened when you had the chance," Joe continued, his voice rising with fury. "I was letting you off easy compared to what Co would have done. But now you've gone and done it." Screaming, Joe charged forward and threw a wild punch straight at Max's face. Calmly, without even raising his hands, Max shifted to the side, effortlessly dodging both of Joe's wild swings. After a particularly large, sloppy punch, Max stepped in close. With precision, he grabbed Joe by the shoulders and yanked him down, driving his knee hard into his gut. Spit burst from Joe's mouth as the air was violently knocked from his lungs. He tried to inhale, to recover, but it felt like nothing was coming back in. And just as the panic hit him, so did Max's fist. A bare-knuckled strike connected squarely with his jaw, snapping Joe's head back. Shockwaves of pain rattled through his skull as he dropped to the floor, collapsing onto his backside in a daze. "Ark!" Joe screamed in agony. "Shut up!" Max snapped, grabbing Joe's head with one hand and slapping him hard across the face with the other. "Ark!" Smack! Another slap. Every sound Joe let out was met with another sharp slap. Again and again, until, finally, the message landed. Joe stopped making a sound. Max stood over him, breathing heavily, running one hand through his hair. "I was so damn tired of that little act," Max muttered. "What is wrong with you? Are you mentally deranged? Do you have some kind of sick foot fetish or something?" He looked down at Joe's trembling form. "The more I think about it, the more I'm starting to feel like I haven't done enough." Joe instinctively flinched. His mind was spinning from the first two heavy hits, his vision blurred, and his legs felt like jelly. The stinging in his face was sharp and constant, and his cheek was beginning to swell. Max looked down at him, expression cold and unrelenting. "And now look at you," Max said, brushing his knuckles off. "You just had to go and ruin my damn plans." Outside the school grounds, Abby was walking briskly beside one of the science teachers. "I can't believe it," the teacher muttered, clearly annoyed. "Skipping first period just to pull this kind of stunt? I seriously worry for the next generation." They quickened their pace. The bell for first period had already rung, and although the teacher didn't have a class to supervise at the moment, Abby was missing hers. "You're sure this is where they went?" the teacher asked. "Yeah, the music storage room," Abby confirmed with a firm nod. Just moments earlier, Sam had rushed up to her in a panic. Breathless, nervous, and nearly in tears, he had poured out everything he knew. What he had seen, what he feared was happening. Abby had believed him instantly. Sam might have been shy and awkward, but he wasn't the type to make something like that up. She also knew the truth. If she went to stop the bullies herself, it wouldn't make a difference. Not in this school. They just come back worse than before. After all, Abby was a nobody in the school. No influence, no reputation. But unlike Sam, there was one thing she could do: go straight to a teacher. And that's exactly what she did. To her surprise, the teacher acted quickly, but she wasn't expecting much to come of it. Most of the teachers at this school turn a blind eye unless the problem was shoved directly in front of them. As long as it didn't happen in the classroom or during school hours, they considered it not their responsibility. Sam said they usually take their victims to the music storage room, Abby thought. He was sure of it. The teacher reached the door and unlocked it, pushing it open. Inside, the room was completely empty. "What?" Abby stepped in quickly, her eyes darting around the space. It was small, cramped, and filled with instruments and old chairs, but no sign of Max or Joe anywhere. The teacher crossed his arms and sighed. "Abby," he said, his voice laced with disappointment. "It's first period. Are you telling me the truth? Did you really see anyone come in here? Or did someone just tell you something?" Her guilty expression said it all. Abby looked away, unable to hold eye contact. She was a terrible liar. "Let's head back to class immediately," the teacher said, already turning around. "You're lucky I'm not punishing you for missing part of first period." Abby trailed behind, trying her best not to fall further into trouble, but she couldn't help glancing over her shoulder again and again. "Sam wouldn't lie to me. So what happened to Max? Where is he?" From the far corner of the music storage room, hidden behind several grand pianos stacked like forgotten relics, Max stepped out, his arm tightly wrapped around Joe's mouth. He waited a couple of minutes after the coast was clear before delivering a sharp kick to Joe's back, sending him crashing to the floor. As Joe groaned and scrambled, Max swiftly mounted him, pinning him in place. "What the hell is going on?" Joe shouted in a panic. "This is crazy. What are you doing? Are you trying to kidnap me or something? And who the heck even are you? Are you really the Max I know? The Max you know?" Max muttered darkly, gripping Joe's hand and holding it upright in front of his face. "The Max you knew is dead, and I'm trying to find out why." Max leaned in closer, his voice steady and cold. "You don't get to ask the questions now. I do. And for every lie you tell." He tightened his grip, pushing Joe's fingers apart. "I'll break one of these." Joe's face paled. This is insane, he stammered. You wouldn't. I would, Max said without hesitation. So let's start simple. Why were you and the others targeting me? Max sat firmly on top of Joe. They were about the same size, but with the damage Max had already dealt, Joe was struggling. No matter how much he squirmed, Max shifted his weight just right, keeping him pinned with brutal efficiency. Answer the question. Max snapped, placing his hand over Joe's index finger. What do you mean? Why are we targeting you? Joe shouted in desperation. It's because it's you. You're weak. You never fight back. You're an easy target. As for why it started, I don't know. I just followed KO's lead, that's all. Just as I thought, Max mused. A follower. A sheep. Not even on Max's list. Probably bullied him, just like the others, but never had the guts to think for himself. All right, then answer this, Max said, leaning in closer. What's my name? Your name. Joe's voice cracked. His entire body tensed, confused. It seemed like such a simple question. It's Max Smith. You're Max Smith. Max's grip around Joe's finger tightened, and without a second's hesitation, he yanked. Crack. A sickening crunch filled the air. Joe let out a piercing scream. Ark! Joe screamed, his voice echoing off the storage room walls. He wasn't even sure what hurt more, the sharp pain or the shock of it all. Feeling the unnatural bend in his finger, there was no doubt. It was broken. Before he could recover, he felt Max's grip shift, his other hand now holding onto a different finger. Why? Joe sobbed. I told you the truth. Your name is Max Smith. Max Smith. I know, Max said calmly. But here's the thing. I needed you to understand that my threats aren't empty. That I'm serious. His tone was cold, measured, far too composed for someone in the middle of torturing a classmate. Now you'll think twice about lying, because every time you do, you'll remember this pain and wonder if I'll take another finger. Joe was trembling. His mind raced with a single thought. This guy is nuts. Completely unhinged. Did all the bullying finally push him over the edge? Has he been secretly training, waiting for the right moment to explode? Max leaned in, eyes narrowed. Since you're so good at following orders, then answer this. Why is Ko targeting me? Did he ever tell you? Ever hint at a reason? Joe gulped, his voice barely a whisper. I. Joe stammered, fear overtaking every inch of his body. He couldn't say he didn't know, he wouldn't. Not after what had just happened. If he gave another empty answer, another finger might go. So he searched, desperately digging through his memories for anything, any scrap of useful information. Ko follows orders from the school's top dog, Joe finally said. He's not in our class. He's in class 5A. Every class has a leader. Ko runs ours, but they all answer to him. The guy in 5A. If anyone knows the real reason we target you, Joe continued, it's Ko or that guy. Max took that in silently, nodding to himself. It reminded him of his own school days, a structure just like this. Each class had a so-called boss to keep the delinquents in check, and all of them reported to one kingpin. Back then, that kingpin had been him. I see, Max muttered. So in the end, Ko is the one I need to go after. Then his tone changed slightly. One more thing. Do any of these names mean anything to you? He didn't wait for an answer. Max began listing off the names from the video. The ones the original Max Stern had blamed. He went down the list, watching Joe's eyes, until... Stop, Joe shouted. I know one. The one you said before. Dipter Carl. I know who that is. It was the last name Max had mentioned, and he was grateful he'd finally hit something. A second name from the list. Finally, someone other than Ko. He's the one Ko answers to, Joe confirmed. The leader of this whole school. Max could understand if one bully had it out for someone. Schools were breeding grounds for people looking to feel powerful, whether to vent frustration, inflate their ego, or compensate for their miserable lives. But that kind of bullying usually stayed within a classroom, within a clique. This wasn't that. Dipter wasn't even in the same class. There was no real reason for him to be involved. And yet he was. He was the top guy in the school, and he'd take an interest in Max? Why would someone like that target you? Max wondered. And why would so many people who barely even know you, all have out for you? The deeper Max dug into this life, the more twisted things became. Based on the information he was piecing together, this wasn't just schoolyard bullying. It was a full-on setup, and it was starting to feel far more dangerous than he had originally thought. Technically, Max had already lost his life once, and now he had a growing suspicion that the other Max, the one whose body he now inhabited, had nearly lost his as well. And if that happened again, he had a feeling there wouldn't be a third chance. He needed to be careful, more than ever. Finally, Max stood up, stepping off of Joe, but as Joe tried to rise, Max pressed his foot down firmly on his back, pinning him to the ground once more. "Not so fast," Max said. "You're the only person I know right now who might be useful to me. So you're going to do a little digging." "Digging?" Joe groaned. "Come on, man. You're trying to drag me into something deeper. Look, I swear, I won't touch you again. Just leave me out of it." Max crouched down slightly, his voice low and calm. "No, you're going to keep playing your part. Keep acting like nothing's changed. Keep treating me the same." "But," he continued, "while you're doing that, you'll also be my eyes and ears inside your little pretend gang." Joe's eyes widened in panic. "What? No, you don't get it. You don't know what Dipter's like. If he finds out, if he even suspects, I'll pay you." Max cut him off. Joe blinked. "You send me your e-wallet," Max said coolly. "$500 a month. As long as you keep your mouth shut and do everything I tell you to." $500 wasn't life-changing, but to a high schooler, it was money most of them would never see all at once. Max could already tell he didn't need Joe to answer. He lifted his foot. Joe was already reaching for his phone. "All right, I'll do it," Joe muttered, holding out his phone with his e-wallet QR code pulled up. Eventually, both Max and Joe returned to the classroom just as first period had ended. With the teachers rotating in and out between classes, their late return slipped under the radar, exactly how Max had planned it. Joe kept one hand buried in his pocket. He had already made a quick visit to the nurse's office, claiming he'd tripped and landed on his hand. It was now wrapped and braced, but the real reason behind the injury couldn't be revealed, not even to Co. Fortunately, some of the swelling in his face had gone down during the break, and with enough acting, he might just sell it. As they walked past the desks, Joe gave Max a half-hearted kick to the back, enough to make a scene, but not enough to hurt. "And stay in your seat, got it?" Joe barked. His voice carried just enough force to fool the crowd, though the tremble in his tone was still there for anyone really listening. Cole laughed from his desk as he glanced over. "You two were gone for a while. What? Have too much fun or something?" His eyes narrowed when he focused on Max. "Wait a minute. I told you to make him suffer." He barely looks touched. Joe was tense. He could feel his heart thumping so hard it was like it wanted to leap out of his throat. "Oh, yeah, teacher showed up in the middle of it," Joe lied smoothly. "We had to cut things short. They sent us back to class, so I didn't get to do much." Remembering the earlier interruption, he figured it was a believable enough excuse to sell. "I knew it," Cole muttered, clenching his fist. "Damn teacher got in the way." His eyes drifted across the room, locking on to Sam, who sat stiffly in the corner, clearly trying to make himself invisible. "Then that means—" Co growled. "That damn pig opened his mouth and told someone." His eyes narrowed with venom. "He's going to pay for that." When Sam saw Max again, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. There were no visible bruises, no signs of severe injuries. He had been worried they'd rough him up so badly that Max wouldn't even be able to return to school. "I don't know if talking to Abby did anything, but even if it didn't, I'm just glad he's okay," Sam thought, letting out a small smile. "What the hell is that pig smiling about?" Co sneered as the bell rang, signaling the start of the first break. "He's probably daydreaming about catching some bacon," and Mo chuckled. "Wait, since he's a pig himself, would that count as cannibalism?" The group erupted into laughter, except for one who kept glancing at Max, watching his every move with quiet caution. Break time meant the usual torment. The mockery continued like it was part of the daily schedule. Sam and Max were forced to go along with whatever Co and his crew demanded, even if it meant harassing other students on their behalf. They made Sam ask out several girls in the class, recording every rejection and look of disgust on their phones, treating it all like some sick game. To them, Sam and Max weren't classmates, They were the day's entertainment. And when the usual taunts weren't enough, that's when the hitting started. The group had decided to play rock, paper, scissors with Sam and Max, but with a twist. Whoever lost would get slapped by the winner. There were no other rules, and participation wasn't optional. Of course, when Sam or Max managed to win, their slaps were light, barely a touch on the cheek. But when it was the other way around, the slaps came full force. Oddly enough, for some reason, every time Max was chosen for punishment, Joe was the one picked to do it. "Damn it, Co. Do you have any idea what you're doing?" Joe screamed in his head. "You keep making me mess with this monster, and now he's the one paying me. Will you quit it already?" This time, Joe had thrown scissors. Max threw paper. Co and Mo burst into laughter, cheering like it was the best thing they'd seen all day, while internally, Joe was crying for mercy. Forced to play along, Joe stepped forward and gave Max a slap across the face. It had some force to it, just enough to sell it, but not too much. He even closed his eyes as he delivered it, bracing for what might come later. Finally, the school day had come to an end, the best part of the day for both Max and Sam. "I've managed to make real progress today," Max thought, walking out the front of the school. "I learned about someone else involved. But if Dipter is the one giving Co orders, then someone must be pulling Dipter strings too." Still, the biggest mystery remained. What I just can't figure out is, why didn't Max use his money to fix any of this? He had the means. Why suffer in silence? As always, Max made his usual detour to the gym, needing to clear his mind before deciding what to do next. Meanwhile, Sam had gone straight home. But his day wasn't over just yet. As he walked down the street and stepped through the front door of his house, the familiar chaos of dinner service hit him immediately. "Order for table 5, a woman shouted from the kitchen, her graying hair tied back in a messy bun. I know, honey. Can you take it out yourself?" "I'm still finishing the noodles for the delivery," an older man yelled back, a bandana tied around his head and sweat on his brow. The moment they saw Sam enter, both his parents looked visibly relieved. "You're back. Perfect timing," his mom called out. Without missing a beat, Sam dropped his bag and rushed past them, weaving through the cramped tables toward the kitchen to help. "Sam," his mother shouted, "what happened to your shirt? Is it your friends again? I told you, you need to stop letting them do that. We can't afford to buy another one." "I know, Mom, I know," Sam replied quickly, already heading up the stairs. "Let me just get changed." Sam's parents ran a small restaurant that specialized in grilled barbecue skewers, light snacks, and beer. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. The place was small, with only 4 tables, and even on good days, it was rarely packed. Often, there were long stretches with no customers at all. Still, they didn't complain. They made enough to get by, doing something they loved, something they had always dreamed of. It wasn't easy, but they were proud of it. Moments later, Sam came back downstairs, now wearing a simple apron. Without needing to be asked, he went straight to clearing one of the tables, then moved to the kitchen to help carry out food and serve the customers who were seated. As they watched him, both of Sam's parents smiled, but behind those smiles, there was guilt. Because no matter how grateful they were for their son's help, it never sat right with them that he had to help. That, during every busy moment, Sam was there working instead of resting, studying, or being a normal teenager. They simply didn't make enough to hire anyone. And even if they tried, no one wanted to work for just 2 hours a day. So the only option left was Sam. They wished he could focus on studying, on chasing his dreams, or at the very least, spend time with friends, just being a regular teenager. Sam always told them it was fine, that he didn't mind helping out, that he liked being part of the family business. But no matter how often he said it, it still pained him deeply. An hour passed. The dinner rush was over. Just like most nights, the restaurant was quiet again, still open, but with only the occasional customer coming in here and there. "So, how was school today?" his mother asked gently as she wiped down the counter. "It was the same as always," Sam replied with a shrug. "Nothing special happened. Just school stuff. Stupid stuff." His mother smiled faintly. She could tell something was a little different. He seemed a bit more cheerful than usual. She wanted to ask more, but just then, the bell above the door chimed. They both turned to look and saw 3 boys walk into the restaurant. "Oh, is this your first time here?" she asked kindly, her customer service voice kicking in. "Yeah, actually," One of them replied with a wide grin. Sam was the one who told us about this place. Sam's heart dropped the second he heard that voice. School had ended. This was supposed to be his time, his escape. The one part of the day where everything could be quiet, where he could forget about the torment, the humiliation, and just breathe. But as he slowly lifted his head, he saw the worst of it confirmed. Standing at the entrance, that familiar smug grin stretched across his face. Was Co. "Oh, Sam invited you?" his mother asked, eyeing the three boys as they entered. She noticed right away they were wearing the same school uniform as her son. "Ah, I see. You must be Sam's school friends. He's never brought anyone home before, so this is quite a surprise. Please, please, have a seat," she said warmly, motioning them toward one of the small tables. Meanwhile, Sam's entire body trembled. The people he hated most in the world were now in his home, sitting in his family's restaurant, just a few feet away from his parents. And yet, he couldn't act out. He didn't want to cause a scene or raise suspicion. Seeing how kindly his mother was treating them, how genuinely happy she seemed, it was tearing him apart inside. "Sam, go on and sit with them," she encouraged. "I'll bring you all something to eat." She then turned to head into the kitchen, completely unaware of the tension hanging in the air. "Yeah, come on, Sam. Don't be shy," Co said with that same twisted smile. That smile never left his face. Not wanting to make things worse, Sam reluctantly moved and sat down at the table, right next to Co. They were side by side, while Joe and Mo took the opposite seats, already snickering to themselves. Co casually threw an arm around Sam's shoulder. "Look at this, us friends hanging out at your house. We should have done this sooner," he said with a grin, pulling Sam in closer. Then, in a low whisper near his ear, Co added, "I told you, if you weren't careful, you'd pay for it." As Co pulled away, Sam's mother returned carrying a metal tray loaded with grilled skewers and snacks. His father followed behind, placing a few soft drinks on the table with a smile. "You're all welcome to stay as long as you like," Sam's mother said warmly. "It's the first time he's ever brought friends home, so please, make yourselves comfortable. And don't even think about paying," his father added. "This one's on us." With that, the two of them stepped away, leaving the boys to dig into the food without hesitation. Sam sat frozen, watching as they devoured everything without a hint of shame. His heart sank. Even though his family struggled every day to keep the business running, his parents had still offered them a free meal. They had treated them with kindness, as honored guests. And yet, Co and his crew had ruined his school shirt, humiliated him time and time again, and now were happily eating into his family's livelihood. Why? Why couldn't they just leave him alone? "Hey, this food is really good," Mo said, licking his fingers. "No wonder you grew up to be such a fat pig if you had this around you all the time." Right, Co chuckled. "Since the food's so great, I think we should swing by every day. Your parents did say we were welcome, didn't they?" "Every day," Sam echoed, his voice trembling. He imagined the toll this would take on his parents, the bright, hopeful smiles on their faces. If these boys came every day, it would wear them down, both emotionally and financially. The thought made his stomach twist in knots. He couldn't take it. He just couldn't. "Please," Sam finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please don't come back. Please." Co was just about to bite into another meat skewer, but froze the moment the words left Sam's mouth. "Our servant is making requests now," Co said slowly, lowering the stick back onto the tray. "You should be grateful we're visiting you like this." Mo and Joe stopped chewing, glancing at each other nervously as Co stood from his seat. "Well," Co said, brushing off his pants, "if this is going to be our last visit, we might as well make it a memorable one, right?" With a smirk, he turned and walked toward the counter. For some reason, seeing Co act so casually made Sam's heart pound, as if it were about to leap out of his chest. "Hello, sir," Co said with a polite bow. "I know this might be a lot to ask after everything you've already done for us, but since it's our first time hanging out with Sam and we're having such a great time." Co walked over to the fridge by the side and opened it, pulling out a bottle. But it wasn't just any bottle. It was an alcoholic beverage. "I understand if it's too much," Co added, flashing a charming smile. "It's just that it's a really good day, and I thought maybe we could celebrate." Sam's mother's expression tensed. There was a good reason for it. They were all 17, and the legal drinking age was 18. "Don't worry about it, Nancy," Sam's father called from the kitchen. "I was drinking at 14. Kids always sneak a drink or two at parties when their parents aren't looking. At least this way, we can keep an eye on them. Better here than out on the streets, doing who knows what." Given his reasoning, Sam's mother hesitated, then simply smiled and nodded. "You two are the best," Ko said as he grabbed 3 more glass bottles and brought them back to the table. Once he returned, Ko popped the caps and the group started drinking, everyone except Sam. What is he doing? Sam thought. Is he really planning to never come back? Is he just trying to get as much free stuff as possible? If that's the case, then fine. I'll bear with it for one day. The group continued laughing, drinking, and snapping photos and videos on Ko's phone. They were clearly having a blast. Again, everyone except Sam. When the drinks were nearly finished, Ko stretched his arms out and stood up. I need some fresh air. My face is turning a bit red. You guys stay here and chill," Ko said as he stepped outside the restaurant. Once outside, he looked around, his smirk only growing wider. Pulling out his phone, he brought it to his ear. After a few rings, the other end picked up. "Hiya. I'd like to make a report about a place. It seems they're serving alcohol to underage kids." Ko returned to the restaurant and rejoined the others at the table. In front of him, his bottle of alcohol still had a quarter left, while the others had already finished theirs. Most of the food was gone too, and the group had been there long enough for everyone to start wondering when Ko was finally going to wrap things up and leave. That was when 2 men walked through the front door. "Welcome. How can I he?" Sam's mother stopped mid-sentence the moment she saw them. Both were dressed in uniform, black body armor over white shirts, with the word police clearly displayed on the front and back. From the corner of her eye, she glanced toward the table. "Looks like the report was accurate after all," one of the officers said. "Ma'am, are you the owner of this establishment?" Sam's father rushed over, joining his wife. The two of them looked like they had just seen a ghost. The officers explained they had received an anonymous report that alcohol had been served to minors. And it didn't take much investigation. The teenagers were still sitting at the table in their school uniforms. Still, the officers had taken each of the children aside, making every single one of them give statements about what had happened, as well as additional details to confirm their ages and identities. After that, the students were free to go, while the police remained behind to speak with Sam's parents. "It's a shame about what happened," Ko said as he turned to Sam. "It's a shame this had to be our last visit. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow and hearing all about it." With a casual wave, Ko walked off, followed by the other two, acting as if nothing had happened at all. Did Ko plan all of this? Sam thought. I'm such an idiot. The police have never come here before. It had to be him. He must have been the one who called them. As minors, they'd only get a slap on the wrist for something like this. It wasn't a big deal for them. But for his parents. Just as Sam finished that thought, he saw the officers walk past him and exit the restaurant. "What are we going to do?" he heard his mother say, softly from behind. When he turned around, he could see his father sitting at one of the tables, both of his hands pressed against the sides of his head. "Mom!" "Dad," Sam called out. "Is everything okay?" "What did they say?" "It's over," his father replied. "The police said we're going to lose our license. We're going to have to shut down. And on top of that, there's a fine, $10,000. Now Sam's head was spinning. It was far worse than he had imagined. Losing their license, what was his family going to do for income now? On top of that, how were they even going to afford to pay the fine? One small act of kindness had cost them everything. Walking over, Sam wanted to say something, anything that could help, something that might ease the situation. "Sam, go to your room," his father said. "I know this isn't your fault, but I can't help but think, if your friends hadn't come here today, all of this could have been avoided. They're not my—" Sam couldn't get the words out. What was the point of revealing that they weren't his friends now? The damage was already done, and saying that wouldn't fix anything. "Please, Sam, please just get out of my sight." All of the emotions hit Sam at once, and he ran straight past his parents, up the stairs, and into his room. He didn't turn on the lights. Instead, he climbed onto his bed and curled up in the corner, wrapping his blanket tightly around him. Why is my life like this? Why? I don't care what happens at school. I don't care what happens to me. Sam screamed in his head. Why did they have to come to my home and ruin my family's life? What did I do to deserve this? Sam continued to rock back and forth, thinking about his life, thinking about everything that had happened. It's my fault. It's my fault that now my family is suffering too. If they never had me, if I wasn't here, then they would have been fine. Everything would have been fine. His emotions swirled endlessly back and forth, but the worst part of it all was knowing that it wasn't over. And when I go back to school tomorrow, they'll laugh. They'll hit me and beat me and do it all over again. This pain, everything, it will never go away, Sam thought as he remained curled up in the darkness. The next day, Max arrived at school just like he normally would have. Although this time, he came a little later than usual. He had realized that arriving early only gave the others more opportunities to bully him. My training's been going well. This body's been adapting to my workouts quicker than I thought. Max smiled to himself. I guess Max must have had good genetics. He just never worked out a day in his life. Entering the classroom, Max looked over at the three troublemakers as he took his seat in the corner. As he glanced around, he noticed something else. Right next to him, the seat was empty. Oh, is Sam sick today? Max wondered. Or maybe they beat him a little too hard last night, so he's decided to take a day off. I wouldn't blame him, but if that's the case, it might put a bigger target on my back. No one to share the pain with. Just then, the teacher walked in and shut the door behind him. He strode straight to the podium and slammed his book down on the edge, silencing the room instantly. Listen up, everyone. I have an announcement to make, and it's important that you all hear it, the teacher said, his voice more serious than usual. He looked up from his notes, adjusting his glasses as they slid down the bridge of his nose. It's unfortunate, but I have to inform you that our fellow classmate, Sam Churn, has passed away. Sam is dead. The words hit Max like a punch to the gut, a strange and heavy feeling anchoring itself deep in his stomach. He had lost people before, people close to him, people important to the White Tiger Gang. He thought he was numb to that kind of pain by now. But hearing this, hearing that Sam, someone younger than Max was when he'd lost his own life, was gone, it did something to him. Something he hadn't expected. Memories came flooding in, uninvited. That hopeful smile on Sam's face when they stood together outside the school gates. The way Sam had told him he'd take a few hits to repay him someday. It had been genuine, honest. Max's fists clenched tightly as that image of Sam, smiling, flashed in his mind again. Can I have stopped this? He thought, anger burning low in his chest. Was I so focused on learning the truth about Max Stern's life that I didn't notice what was happening right in front of me? His eyes drifted toward the three he knew were responsible. For once, they weren't laughing. They weren't smirking or joking. They were stiff, silent, maybe even shocked. And Max could only wonder, was this guilt or fear? Was it because of them? Max's thoughts spiraled. But both Sam and the real Max Stern had been bullied for years. It couldn't just be that, could it? Did something push him over the edge? Or was it something darker, something like what happened to the real Max Stern? He took a deep breath, but it felt like his brain was spinning out of control. He was starting to overthink everything, chasing answers in circles. And worst of all, he didn't even know how Sam had died. The incident is a difficult one for the school, the teacher said, his tone tight and serious. Due to particular circumstances, each and every one of you will be interviewed by the police. I expect full cooperation. Tell them everything you know. The police? Max's heart skipped. So this isn't just a tragic accident. This is something more. Right then, a woman and a man in uniform stepped into the classroom. Their presence instantly changed the atmosphere. Quiet fell heavy over the room as they explained the process. A separate classroom was being prepared for the interviews, and students would be called in, one by one, to give their statements. Parents had already been contacted. The procedure was official, and there was no avoiding it. For the rest of the day, all classes are canceled, the teacher announced. A schedule will be posted here for when your interview with the officers is due. Make sure you're back in this room by then, and no one is to leave the school grounds. Understood. The first name was called for an interview. As expected, Max's name and the trios weren't anywhere near the top of the list. It looked like they'd be called closer to the end of the day. The moment the police officers stepped out of the room, a wave of whispers broke out like a rising tide. Students leaned across desks, heads low, their voices barely above a murmur. Speculation spread quickly. Most were wondering the same thing Max was. What really happened to Sam? And more importantly, had the trio pushed him too far? From his corner, Max kept his eyes locked on them. Ko, for once, wasn't grinning. Shit, 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 Ko muttered under his breath, biting at his thumbnail, eyes darting across the room. What the hell was wrong with that guy? Why'd he have to go and do something like that? That damn pig's causing problems even after he's dead. What are we gonna do? Mo hissed, leaning in close. Without a word, Ko pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. All of us are in this together, he said in a low growl. There's only one person we can go to now. Joe leaned in, eyes narrowing when he saw the name appear on the screen. Dipter, the head of the school. Even KO's hands were trembling slightly as he sent the message. It didn't take long for a reply to come back. Ko stood up, voice cold and clipped. Dipter wants to meet us. At the cage. Without hesitation, the three of them rose from their seats and slipped toward the door. Max watched, eyes narrowed. The cage wasn't just any spot on school grounds, it was the spot. Technically, it was meant to be an indoor soccer area, complete with 2 worn-down goalposts. But no one played there anymore. Instead, it had become the unofficial hangout for the school's worst delinquents. As Max watched the trio slip out of the classroom and head toward the cage, his thoughts began to spiral. Should I follow them? He wondered, muscles tense. Their behavior today is way too suspicious. But if I tail them and get caught, it could turn into a disaster, especially with the police around. Still, something told him none of them would risk doing anything stupid while the authorities were present. Then again, I shouldn't be causing trouble either. Not today. Maybe he could just ask Joe afterward, find out what they discussed, if he was willing to talk. But something about this moment itched at the back of Max's mind. He needed a clearer picture. He needed to see it for himself. So, he stood up and quietly slipped out the classroom door, keeping a careful distance as he followed. Eyes narrowed, posture calm, he stayed focused. All he needed to know was who they were meeting. That might be the answer to everything. But just then, Max, a voice called out behind him. He froze, so focused on tracking the trio, he hadn't even noticed someone approaching. 1 second of distraction, and they'd already turned the corner. Damn it, I lost them. When Max turned around, he saw her, the same girl who had stopped him in the hallway once before. Abby. Her soft eyes met his. Max, are you okay? Is everything all right? Do you know what happened? Max asked, skipping the small talk. You mean about Sam? She replied gently. Yeah, I think the whole school knows by now. Of course they do, Max thought. With phones in everyone's hands, there's no such thing as secrets anymore. Abby shifted her weight, hesitating for a moment before continuing. It seemed like you two were close. I mean, I saw you talking to him a lot. I thought you were friends, so I've been wondering, how are you holding up? Max glanced away. It's hard to process, he admitted. It caught me off guard. I didn't expect something like this to happen. Abby nodded, her ponytail swaying slightly. Sam was a good person. You know, when he thought you were in trouble, he came running to find me. He was really worried about you. Max's brows knit together. When was this? Yesterday, she said, voice quiet. He said your classmates had pulled you out of class. He was scared they were going to hurt you. So the 2 of us went to get a teacher. Max's chest tightened. Abby had no idea what that one moment might have cost Sam. Max's mind flashed back to the moment in the music room, when he'd been with Joe and the teacher had shown up with Abby. At the time, he'd brushed it off as a coincidence. But now, hearing the truth, he realized why the teacher had really come. It was because of Sam. Like a puzzle piece locking into place, everything clicked. And with it came that sick feeling twisting deep in Max's stomach. The look on their faces, the panic Ko and the others had when they heard the news, wasn't normal. It wasn't shock, it was fear. They knew something. They'd done something. And now, a terrifying thought crept into Max's mind like a whisper he couldn't ignore. Could all of this really have happened just because Sam was trying to help me? The realization would lead to a change in Max's entire life going forward. Kojo, and Mo had finally made it to the cage outside. The area was fairly empty, while a few students loitered nearby. The cage itself was usually packed, especially when Dipter called a meeting. Normally, it meant every delinquent in the school would gather here, but not this time. And somehow, that made the whole thing feel even more personal. Instead of a crowd, Dipter stood there with just two people by his side. One of them was a big guy, not exactly muscular but broad and solid. His short-cropped hair faded cleanly on the sides, with a messy tuft at the top. The moment Ko saw him, he tensed. Jay Woods, one of the strongest students in the entire school. Back when the school was deciding on its head, it had been a toss-up between Jay and Dipter. People had taken sides. There were even rumors of a fight that never happened. In the end, Dipter was the one chosen to lead. And then there was the other student, taller, leaner, with dyed green hair and a mask that covered the bottom half of his face. Snide. Everyone knew that name, not just because of how he looked, but because of the rumors that he'd stabbed someone from a rival school, that he was dangerous, unpredictable. Seeing both of them here now, standing quietly beside Dipter, sent a message loud and clear. This meeting wasn't just personal, it was serious. Then there was Dipter himself, cool as ever, a cigarette hanging lazily from the corner of his mouth, both hands shoved deep in his pockets. His sharp, wide eyes held a coldness that could make anyone freeze, and his slick-back hair revealed a prominent forehead that somehow made him look even more intimidating. He was the head of the school, the undisputed top dog of all the delinquents, the one who called the shots. Even Ko took orders from him. "You've gotten yourselves into one hell of a mess, haven't you?" Dipter said, his voice low and cutting. "I can't believe it. How the hell did you guys manage to get rid of the one kid we weren't even targeting?" Ko stared down at his feet, unable to bring himself to meet Dipter's gaze. "Look at me," Dipter ordered. Instantly, Ko's head snapped up, his eyes locking with Dipter's. "I already know what happened," Dipter continued. "You lot were having way too much fun playing king of your little sandbox. Now look what you've done. I have to clean up the mess." He took one last drag from his cigarette before flicking it to the ground and stepping on it. "Luckily, I've managed to smooth things over for now. Gotten some advice, too. You're going to tell the truth about what you did to the kid." All three of them froze in shock. "The truth," Ko echoed, confused. "There are way too many statements from your classmates. Too many kids who saw what you were doing. But don't be stupid, play it down. Don't make it sound like it was a big deal." "Got it," Dipter said, his voice sharp enough to cut through steel. "Show them you regret what you did. Act like you never expected things to go this far," Dipter said, flicking ash off his cigarette. "All three of you are just kids. Since they're ruling it as suicide, it's going to be tough for them to pin it on you anyway. But if they do, at worst, you'll get a slap on the wrist." He let out a long, tired sigh, like even this cleanup job was starting to annoy him. "I don't think I need to spell this out. Keep your heads down while the police are here. And once they're gone, make sure you handle the right target next time. No more mistakes. Do exactly what you're told." Times like this were when the trio felt grateful that someone like Dipter was at the top, someone who could keep things under control when everything was about to blow up. The trio eventually returned to class, walking in with more composure than before, though they still looked uneasy. The police investigations were still in progress, students being called one by one to give statements. It was all being done alphabetically by last name, which meant Max Stern was near the bottom of the list. He sat quietly in his corner, eyes tracking the trio as they were called out one at a time, his mind racing through everything that had happened. "I remember when I was in school before, if the teachers ever found out about stuff like this, about bullying at this level, it never made anything better," Max thought. "It made everything 10 times worse." "Things changed when I became head of the school," Max thought, his jaw tight. "I shut all that crap down. But if the teachers find out Sam was the one who called them yesterday, crap. And I already feel guilty enough for not doing anything." Max Smith. His name echoed through the room, the teacher's voice breaking his thoughts. It was his turn. As Max stepped into the hallway, the teacher walked ahead, guiding him down the corridor toward one of the empty rooms set aside for the interviews. But just before they reached it, someone stepped out of another classroom up ahead. "Ko!" Max's eyes narrowed. But it wasn't just Ko. There was someone standing beside him. A man dressed in a sleek gray suit, his hair perfectly styled, a subtle sheen on his polished shoes. He wore a gold name badge clipped to his jacket pocket. Max squinted. Odin Law Firm? His thoughts scrambled for context. No way. That's one of the biggest law firms in the entire country. Everyone knows them. They're the kind of people who get celebrities out of messes the public never even hears about. And not just celebs, some of the more powerful groups I knew used firms like Odin to make problems vanish. Hell, we used someone just like them in the White Tigers. His eyes flicked back to Ko, who was smirking like nothing in the world could touch him. Just what kind of protection do these kids have? Their prices aren't something kids from a random public school could afford, Max thought, eyes narrowing. It's starting to become clearer now. Someone is definitely behind all of this. The presence of a lawyer from Odin Law Firm, one of the most prestigious in the country, only confirmed what Max had been suspecting. Whoever was pulling the strings had real power. And with legal backup like that, Ko and the others weren't going to face consequences for anything they'd done. Not unless someone made them. But more than that, it all but confirmed something else for Max. They were responsible. I'm sure of it now. The moment Max stepped into the interview room, his eyes scanned the setup. A camera sat on a tripod in the corner, a plane table, a police officer, and a teacher stationed nearby, likely as a school representative. After he took his seat, the officer began to speak, reading out his rights, explaining the procedure in calm, even tones. Max nodded along, confirming he understood. The question started out basic: name, age, class, details to verify identity. Then the tone shifted. Max, according to several reports from other students, it's been said that you were also being bullied, along with Sam, in your classroom. Can you confirm whether that's true? And if so, could you describe what kind of things were done to the two of you? Max stared ahead, silent for a moment, the weight of it all pressing down on him. He thought carefully, piecing together what needed to be said. Then, slowly, he opened his mouth to speak. They'll be tried as minors, right? Max asked, his eyes locked on the officers. Can I ask something else? Was Sam's death ruled a suicide? Did he leave anything behind that pointed to them being at fault? And if I say anything, will it really change the outcome? The two officers exchanged a quick, surprised glance before one of them responded. We're not at liberty to share details about the case, Max. But what we can say is this: any information you provide can help. The more we understand, the more we can prevent things like this from happening again. Max didn't respond. Instead, he calmly rose from his seat. I believe I'm not being detained, he said, so I'm leaving. And for the rest of your questions, just consider my answer no comment. Without another word, Max turned and headed for the door. He ignored the teacher calling after him, his mind already elsewhere as he pulled out his phone and fired off a text. A few minutes later, Max walked right past his classroom without even a glance. He turned the corner and pushed open the door to the boys' restroom. Inside, just as expected, Joe was waiting, his posture tense, his eyes flicking toward the entrance as soon as Max walked in. I got your message, Joe said, his voice low and jittery. But I really don't think we should be seen together this much, you know? And that's why I messaged you to meet me in here, Max said, his tone sharp and to the point. There was no patience in his voice, no room for games. Did you and Ko find out that Sam told the teacher about what I was doing to you? Oh, that, Joe replied, fidgeting where he stood. I don't know the full story, but Ko had a hunch. He said Sam must have snitched or something, and he wanted to pay him back. And Max asked, his voice low but pressing. Joe didn't respond. He was visibly nervous, shifting his weight, his eyes not meeting Max's. His hands still ached from their last encounter. His finger, wrapped in bandages, was a constant reminder. What did you do? Max asked again, firmer now. All right, I'll tell you everything, Joe blurted out. But it wasn't my idea, okay? You told me to keep acting like normal, remember? With that, Joe started talking. He explained everything, how they had gone to Sam's family restaurant, how Ko led the whole thing, how they acted like customers, and how it ended with the police showing up. Every detail spilled out in a ramble of regret and fear. Max stood frozen, letting it all sink in. He wanted to feel angry. He should have felt angry. But that wasn't the emotion bubbling inside him. No, what Max felt was something far worse, guilt. It wasn't just them. He had set all of this in motion. A chain of events, decisions made one after another, leading to a kid's death. A kid who had tried to help him. Without saying another word, Max reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "What are you doing? Are you going to tell the police?" Joe asked, his voice rising in panic. "The police already know. I don't think it's going to help. Dipter got us those lawyers, and the cops were already on the back foot from start. They know about the report, too." Max didn't say a word to Joe's rambling. None of what he said was surprising anymore, not even hearing Dipter's name. It only confirmed what he already suspected. Dipter's name had been on the list for a reason. "I'm doing what he should have done," Max said quietly, unlocking his phone. He scrolled through his contacts and tapped on one name, Stalker. It didn't even ring more than twice before the line picked up. "Well, this is a surprise. Do you need help?" Came Aaron's calm, deep voice on the other end. "You said I could ask you for anything, right?" Max said, his voice steady but cold. "As long as it's within your power, then I need your help. Now." Since Sam's death, a few days had passed at school. The police had wrapped up their investigation, and the results were finally out. It was officially ruled as suicide. According to the report, Sam had climbed to the top of a 6-story building near his family's home, an old apartment complex. Once he reached the roof, he jumped. No one had been there. No one forced him. No one coerced him. And just like that, the case was closed. The authorities had decided not to press charges, not against any students, not against anyone. Max figured it had everything to do with Odin Law Firm. Their reputation alone was enough to make the police think twice. It was a fight the local department likely knew they'd lose, and even if they won, what would they really gain? A slap on the wrist for a few high schoolers? Nothing that would bring Sam back. As for Max, those few days had been eerily quiet. The bullying? Gone. The trio that once ruled the classroom with cruel grins and cheap laughs? Completely silent. The teachers, too, were suddenly alert, more aware, probably out of guilt or fear that another student might do something drastic. It gave Max some space to clear his head and push his training to its absolute limit. Part of training, Max knew, wasn't just about pushing limits, it was about recovery too. And with the constant hits from the others, recovery had been nearly impossible. His strength still wasn't anywhere near what it had once been, but his stamina that was coming back fast. Then came the third day since Sam's death. It was a Friday, right before the weekend, when the teacher walked into the room and cleared his throat, his expression unusually serious. "I have an important announcement regarding the tragic events that occurred recently," he began, adjusting his glasses. "Sam's parents will be holding his funeral tomorrow. They've invited all of his classmates to attend. Of course, attendance isn't mandatory," he continued. "But if you were close with Sam, it might be a good time to say a few kind words and pay your respects." Only those from their class had been invited. Max understood why. Sam's parents had no idea who his real friends were, if he had any at all. So they'd invited the entire class, assuming anyone had cared enough to show up. But Max knew the truth. Sam had no friends. No one to help him. No one who truly saw him. On his way home, Max stopped by the gym. This time, every punch he threw at the heavy bag echoed louder than before. Each one sharp, furious, like he was trying to knock something loose from his chest. Stephen could tell right away. Those fists, they weren't about training. They were about rage. I wouldn't want to be the poor soul standing on the other side of those hits, Stephen thought, watching from the counter. And that damn kid, he still hasn't told me whether he was serious about that offer or not. I've got to figure something out with these debts. If I don't, I'll owe him and a lot more people way more than I can pay back. Later, Max made his way home. He got some rest, knowing what tomorrow held. But early in the morning, a knock on the door stirred him from sleep. Still in his briefs, he stumbled to the door and peeked through the peephole. He blinked once. "Oh, right. It's the weekend," he muttered. "Guess he showed up earlier than expected." Max opened the door. "Come in, stalker." "Stalker," Aaron said, raising a brow as he stepped in, one hand holding up a black-covered hanger. "You're calling me a stalker? When I only show up at your request, only on weekends, and I've been over backward to fulfill all your demands." He set the hanger down with a sigh. At this point, I'm starting to feel more like your slave. Max had to admit, he felt a little bad hearing Aaron talk like that. He hadn't meant anything by it. He was just so used to seeing Stalker pop up on his phone screen that the nickname had slipped out without thinking. Aaron stepped into the small room, glancing around while Max started getting ready. But as he stood there, he found his eyes drifting toward Max's body, watching him move until eventually, Max turned to face him. "Are you going to keep staring at me?" Max said, raising a brow. "Or are you going to hand over what's in your hand?" "Right." Aaron snapped out of it, quickly holding out the hanger. Laying it down on the bed, Max unzipped the cover. Inside was a full suit, black blazer, crisp white shirt, matching trousers, the whole set perfectly pressed and ready for the day ahead. "So," Max said as he began to dress, glancing sideways, "what had you staring for so long? Missing your boyfriend or something?" Aaron cleared his throat, and a slight tint of red rose to his cheeks. "No, it's not like that," he replied quickly. "I was just surprised. The young master has never gotten changed in front of me before. You've got a better body than I expected." Max smirked as he buttoned up his shirt. "I'm surprised the Stern family allows these kinds of relationships." "What relationships?" Aaron asked, genuinely confused. "Coworker relationships," Max said casually. "I'm sure it's frowned upon." Aaron's face was growing redder by the second. "Please refrain from making crude jokes like that, especially in front of other members of the Stern family. It's for your own sake," Aaron warned. "But I'll admit, it's nice to see you've become more comfortable lately." Eventually, Max was done getting ready. He glanced at himself in the bathroom mirror, adjusting his collar one last time. The reflection staring back at him didn't quite feel like his, even in the sharp black suit. Still, it reminded him of who he used to be, someone who wore suits like armor, someone who'd been to more funerals than he could count. He never expected he'd be going to yet another one, especially in a body that wasn't even his own. Maybe death is just something that follows me, Max thought, his gaze lingering on the mirror a second longer. "Aaron, did you get everything prepared for today?" he asked. "I've done everything exactly as you requested," Aaron replied, standing at attention. With a nod, Max stepped forward and opened the door, taking the lead. "All right," he muttered under his breath. "Let's see how today goes. I hate funerals." Everyone who attended Warrior Public School lived in the nearby neighborhood. That was just how public schools worked. You had to be within a certain zone to even qualify for enrollment. It also meant everything important, including today's funeral, was within a 30-minute walk from campus. The service was being held at the local community hall, a space often rented for everything from bingo nights to birthday parties, and now, for something far more solemn. That was why Max had chosen to walk, despite the light rain falling from the gray sky. Aaron, loyal as ever, was by his side, holding an umbrella above his head to shield him from the drizzle. "I still say it would have been smarter to take the car," Aaron said. "You'd be there by now, and completely dry." "Right," Max replied, "and I'd step out a car worth more than half the neighborhood." Real subtle. It's not exactly the kind of thing Batman would use to stay unnoticed. He trailed off for a second, questioning his own comparison. Aaron raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. The two continued on through the quiet streets, the soft patter of rain the only sound between them. Batman was supposed to be a creature of the night, a figure who thrived in the shadows. So why did he drive around in a flashy vehicle that could be spotted from a mile away? It practically announced his arrival with a neon sign. Anyway, Max continued, glancing sideways at Aaron. "My point is, it draws attention. And you, my friend, attract plenty of that yourself." "Me? But, sir, look, I know the arrangement. You're supposed to guard me on weekends. That was the deal. But today isn't exactly a normal day. I just need you to hang back and follow through with what we discussed when the time's right." Aaron looked like he wanted to argue, his expression tight with reluctance. But he said nothing, and when Aaron went quiet, it usually meant he was on board. "I know," Max added with a faint smirk. "If we stay apart for too long, you start getting withdrawal symptoms." As the funeral site came into view ahead, Max gave a small nod, his signal. Then, without another word, he stepped out from under the umbrella and into the drizzle. He didn't flinch. He just kept walking, letting the rain soak through. What was the point of me shielding the young master all this time? Aaron muttered under his breath. If he's just going to get soaked anyway. But Max had his reasons. It was a personal rule of his, one he never broke. He never brought an umbrella on the day of a funeral. To him, the rain wasn't just weather. It was the sky weeping for the one who had passed. And he believed in accepting those tears, letting them fall. At the funeral service, Sam's mother and father stood at the front of the hall, dressed in mourning black. Each time someone entered, they bowed and thanked them softly for coming. Their faces were hollow, their eyes puffy and vacant, as if they'd been crying nonstop for days. When Max stepped in, he bowed his head respectfully to both of them. "Thank you for coming," they said, voices brittle and worn. Max scanned the room as he made his way inside. Tables were lined with modest snacks and refreshments, meant to comfort the guests. Most of the people there looked to be extended family, quiet, grieving, somber. There were barely any students. In fact, Max seemed to be the only one from school who had shown up. "I wonder what happened," someone whispered nearby. "Do you think it was trouble at home?" "No, you know Nancy and Koo. They were wonderful parents," someone whispered nearby. "They did everything for their child. If I had to guess, it was probably something that happened at school." The quiet hum of gossip floated through the room, soft, hushed, but still present. It was common at gatherings like this. People trying to make sense of tragedy in whispers. After a few more guests had filtered in and paid their respects, Sam's mother and father walked slowly toward the front, where a framed picture of Sam rested beside a small urn. They lowered themselves to their knees beside it, silent, still broken. One by one, guests were invited to take an incense stick. Each person stepped forward, lit the stick, and bowed several times before placing it in the burner. It was a tradition, a way of offering hopes, prayers, and peace to the soul of the departed. A small wish for Sam to find joy in whatever came next. Some guests lingered afterward, sharing kind words with the parents, whispers of sympathy, gentle hugs. Max waited. He didn't want eyes on him, not for this. He waited until the chatter had returned, until the attention was elsewhere. Then he moved. He stepped forward, took an incense stick between his fingers, and bowed, once, twice again. The motion was familiar, one he had done more times than he cared to count in his life before this one. He moved forward and gently placed the incense into the holder. "You look young," a voice said. Max looked up. It was Sam's father, his tired eyes suddenly blinking with faint awareness, like he'd broken through a fog just for this moment. "Could it be, did you go to Sam's school? Were you one of Sam's friends?" his mother asked, her voice laced with desperation, clinging to the possibility. "I was one of his classmates," Max replied softly. "Because of something's going on with me, I couldn't attend school for a while. Sam was seated next to me, so I didn't get the chance to know him well." He saw it, how their expressions shifted the moment he said that. Disappointment, like a wave, washing over their faces. But Max didn't want to lie. Not to them. But, Max continued, his voice steady. "In the short time I did spend with Sam, he did a lot for me. He was kind. He had this foolishly generous heart. I really wish I had gotten to know him better." And like that, something changed again. The disappointment melted. In its place, a new warmth, soft, tearful smiles as fresh tears traced down their cheeks. "He was," Sam's father said with a trembling voice. "He really was such a good kid." Their sobs continued, gentle but deep, and Max gave them a moment. When it eased just enough, he spoke again. "When the service is over," Max said, "there's someone who wants to meet you. You've never seen him before, but you'll know who he is when he arrives. He'll be well-dressed, speaks like he's from a different world than ours. But please," Max said, voice low but firm, "do me a favor for yourselves and for Sam. Just listen to what he has to say." Sam's parents looked at each other, still unsure, still lost in their grief. But eventually, they nodded. Maybe it was because Max was the only classmate who'd shown up. Maybe it was just something in his voice. Whatever it was, they chose to trust him. Rising from the floor, Max felt that he had spent enough time here. He turned, heading toward the doors, ready to leave this heavy place behind, at least for now. But then he stopped cold. His eyes landed on the entrance, and there they were. Three figures stepped through the doorway, their presence sharp and jarring in the quiet room. Max's stomach twisted. No way. Not them. What the hell are they doing here? He thought, his fists tightening. Walking into the funeral, as if they belonged, were Ko, Mo, and Joe, the same trio responsible for so much of Sam's pain. After everything they did, after what they caused, they don't deserve to be here. It was Friday evening, just before the students had headed home for the weekend, when Ko and his crew, Mo and Joe, got the message. Another meeting at the cage. They hated being summoned, especially now. The incident with Sam still hung heavy in the air. Even with the lawyer's smooth words and reassurances, none of them truly felt safe. The truth was still out there, and they knew it. When they arrived, the setup was exactly like before. Dipter stood in the middle, calm and collected, with Jay and Snide flanking him like shadows. Ko stepped forward, his nerves showing in the tightness of his voice. Did something happen? Is there an update? Dipter didn't move. He just stared, a cigarette dangling from his lips, before speaking. No update. Just instructions. A way to wrap up the mess you three managed to create. Ko swallowed hard. Tomorrow's the funeral for the kid, Dipter continued. You're going. All three of you. What? The three shouted at once, their voices cracking with disbelief. They looked at each other, stunned. Everyone at school knew what they'd done. There were whispers in every hallway, eyes that lingered longer than they used to. The whole class had turned cold toward them, and they wouldn't be surprised if Sam's parents had heard rumors too. The idea of walking into that funeral, facing Sam's grieving family, it felt impossible. But Dipter's expression didn't change. He wasn't asking. He was ordering. I'm just repeating what the law firm told me, Dipter said, flicking ash from his cigarette. They said you need to show remorse, in case this goes anywhere in the future. Things are fine for now, but who knows what someone might dig up later. He looked at each of them, holding their uneasy gazes. So to cover your backs, and everyone else is involved in this mess, you need to show up. Put on your best faces, look sad, act respectful. It's not a request. Ko, Joe, and Mo exchanged nervous glances. Every part of them screamed that this was a terrible idea. Why were they listening to some lawyers? Just because they were well-dressed and threw around big words didn't mean they understood how things really worked. At least, that's what Ko told himself. But what if his parents hate us? Ko muttered. If we show up, they'll recognize us. They might throw us out. Shout at us. We were the last ones to see him. They'll know. Dipter just laughed, cold and careless. They won't. Trust me. People like them. When they're grieving, they don't lash out. They cling to anything that looks like closure. You'll walk in, bow your heads, light the incense, and they'll probably thank you for being there. It's how these things go. With no room to argue and no options left, the trio had arrived at the service the next day. Dressed in black suits, stiff collars, and fake solemnity, they stepped through the doors. Late. They shifted uncomfortably as they entered, eyes darting around the quiet room, unsure where to go, unsure if they even belonged there. Eventually, though, the trio made their way to the incense table. With trembling fingers, each one took a stick, lit it, and dropped to their knees in unison. They bowed their heads, pretending to pray, and then gently placed the incense into the holder beneath Sam's photo. Rising from her position, Sam's mother turned, and her teary eyes locked onto them. "Oh, it's you three," she said, her voice cracking as fresh tears welled up again. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming and being here for our boy." "Yes," Sam's father added, stepping forward, his face drawn and weary. "Thank you. I know there was trouble before, but the fact that you still came today, it means the world. Thank you for being a part of his life and for being here now." Ko stood frozen, speechless. He couldn't believe it. What Dipta had said was actually true. There was no anger, no blame, just gratitude. They didn't know. They had no idea what the three of them had done to their son. And instead of anger, they were clinging to the only story that brought them comfort. That maybe, just maybe, Sam hadn't been alone. That maybe someone had cared. From across the room, Max watched the scene unfold. His right hand was trembling uncontrollably. So much so, He had to grip it tightly with his other hand just to keep it from shaking. They're groveling, being thanked by the very people they destroyed. I don't think I've ever experienced something so twisted, not even during my time with the White Tiger. After receiving heartfelt gratitude from Sam's grieving parents, Ko and the others began to move more freely around the hall. The anxiety that had gripped them earlier seemed to vanish, because now they understood something terrifyingly simple. They had gotten away with it. This was how the world worked. And as far as they were concerned, they were untouchable. As they wandered toward the snack tables, KO's eyes landed on someone standing alone. Max. The three of them made their way over. Joe trailed behind, doing his best to avoid making eye contact. Well, Max. Ko grinned, his confidence fully returned. Didn't expect to see you here. But I guess it makes sense. Thanks to us, you and Sam got so close, right? I think you owe us a thank you for that. He chuckled, nudging Mo, who let out a laugh too. Joe only offered a stiff, awkward smile. Max didn't respond. He just stood there, his chest rising and falling slowly, rhythmically. Breathing in, breathing out. Thankfully, a voice rang out through the hall, cutting the tension like a blade. Thank you, everyone, for coming today, Sam's father said gently. The service is now over. We wish you all a peaceful day. As those words left Sam's father's mouth, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. One by one, people started to file out quietly, offering soft goodbyes and final bows. Ko took that as his cue to make an exit. Looks like it's time for us to go, he said with a smug tilt of his head. But remember, Max, things will be back to normal at school. Mo leaned in, grinning like he was in on some cruel joke. Yeah, you better stay in line and do what we say. Who knows, maybe next time, we'll be here for you instead. With that, Ko turned on his heel and strutted toward the exit, the other two trailing behind him. Joe didn't even dare look back, not once. He kept his eyes on the floor the entire time. After everything they've done, they're still planning to keep going? Max thought, his blood boiling. No remorse, no respect. To say something like that here, right in front of Sam's parents, at his funeral, most of the guests had already gone. The space had fallen into a somber quiet, and that's when Max noticed Aaron step through the doors at the far end of the room. Taking that as his own cue, Max began walking toward the exit, just as Aaron passed by him. The two exchanged only a brief moment, but Aaron leaned in to whisper. Are you sure you don't want to stay with me for this part? He asked softly. I think they'd appreciate it more than you think. No, it's fine, Max replied, his voice steady but distant. Besides, there's something else I need to take care of. Without another word, he brushed past Aaron and stepped out into the cool air. As he turned his head, his eyes narrowed, locking onto three familiar figures walking together down the street in the distance. Ko, Mo, and Joe, still laughing, still free, and completely unaware of what was coming. Aaron stepped inside the hall, scanning the room until his eyes landed on the two people he needed to speak with. But just as he began to move toward them, he hesitated. The look on the young master's face, it reminded me of the one he wore at the Stern family party that night, Aaron thought. No, this time it was worse. Much worse. His feet rooted in place, he questioned himself. Should I go after him? Be there with him right now? Before he could decide, both of Sam's parents noticed the sharply dressed young man standing near the entrance. He stood with perfect posture, his tailored black suit catching the light in a way that made it seem to shimmer, even among the sea of dark mourning clothes. Excuse me, Sam's father said gently as he approached. Are you the one? A boy told us someone might come speak with us after the service. The words pulled Aaron from his spiraling thoughts. He straightened up and offered a polite, practiced smile. This is the first time the young master has entrusted me with something truly important. I won't let him down. He gave them a respectful bow. That's correct. I believe this conversation would be best if the three of us sat down. Following Aaron's lead, Sam's parents were guided to one of the empty tables at the back of the hall. The food had already been cleared away, leaving the space clean and quiet. Aaron sat on one side, while Sam's mother and father took their seats opposite him, still carrying the weight of the day in their expressions. What's your relationship with that young boy? Sam's mother asked, her voice cautious but curious. Max, Aaron replied calmly. The two of us share a close relationship. But what I'm here for today, it's separate from that. He folded his hands neatly on the table. I imagine you're both wondering why I've come, especially on such a difficult day. There was something in Aaron's tone, gentle, measured, that soothed them in a way neither expected. Despite the emotional storm they were in, his presence felt oddly grounding. "You're right," Sam's father said, glancing at his wife. "The boy, Max, he told us to listen to you. Said you had something important to say. He seemed like a good kid." "He is," Aaron said with a soft smile. "And maybe that's why I'm here now. You see, I heard about what happened a few days ago, your restaurant losing its license. I understand you're in the process of selling the equipment, maybe even the business itself. Is that right?" "Correct," Sam's mother replied with a quiet nod. "But with everything that's happened, we honestly haven't had the time to sort anything out. Even just speaking about it brought a heavy ache to their hearts. Without the business, how were they supposed to make a living? It was the kind of worry that gnawed at you late at night, never letting go. But now, with the loss of their son, they both felt like they would have gone into any amount of debt just to bring him back. They would have gladly shut the restaurant down 100 times over if it meant seeing his face again. And as those thoughts twisted painfully inside them, Sam's father suddenly remembered the last words he'd spoken to his son. "The news I have for you," Aaron began gently, "won't heal your wounds, but might help ease some of the weight." He reached into his bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper, sliding it across the table toward them. "Your restaurant license, the one that had been revoked, it's been reinstated. Your business no longer has to shut down," Aaron said, watching their stunned expressions. "And there's more." He revealed a few more documents, neatly stacked, and placed them on the table. "This here is an offer. A proposal to purchase 1% of your business." 1%? Sam's father echoed, caught off guard. It wasn't the kind of moment where someone wanted to read legal documents, but the situation felt so strange, so unexpected, that he found himself picking it up anyway, scanning the words with wide eyes. Immediately, one number leapt off the page like a flashing red light. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" Sam's father suddenly snapped, his voice rising as he stood to his feet. "On a day like this, you choose now to play games with us?" "I assure you," Aaron said calmly, unfazed by the outburst, "this is no joke. The funds will be deposited immediately the moment you sign that contract." Sam's mother, startled by her husband's reaction, reached over and gently pulled the contract toward her. Her eyes skimmed over the print, and then she saw it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 zeros. She whispered, "This can't be right." Her hands trembled slightly as she looked up. "You're offering $1 million? For just 1% of our business?" "It makes no sense," Sam's father added, still in disbelief. "This has to be some kind of scam. Who would do something like this?" "You're free to have any lawyer review the contract," Aaron replied evenly. "Any costs involved, we'll cover them. We just want you to feel safe. No tricks, no fine print." The room fell into a stunned silence. Even with the chaos of their grief, the absurdity of the offer was impossible to ignore. "But why?" Sam's father finally asked, his voice quieter this time, almost a whisper. "Why would anyone do this? There has to be a reason. There's no such thing as a free lunch in this world." Aaron slowly rose from his seat. The conversation had run its course. He'd said what needed to be said. Any more, and they'd probably start doubting him again, chalking it all up to some too-good-to-be-true scam. "You're not wrong," Aaron said gently. "There's always a reason behind actions like this. But the truth is, this isn't about either of you." Both of Sam's parents looked up, confused. "This is being done because of Sam." "Because of Sam?" his mother repeated, barely above a whisper. "I can't say too much," Aaron continued. "But the person responsible for all of this, the offer, the help, he wishes he could have done something sooner. He regrets not being there when Sam needed someone most." His words hung in the air like a heavy mist. "So now," Aaron went on, his tone soft but firm, "he's doing what he can to make sure Sam's family is protected, to do right by him, because your son was a good person. And if he hadn't been, none of this would be happening." The explanation only deepened the ache in their hearts. pressing on the wounds that had barely begun to scab over. Aaron reached into his jacket, pulled out a business card, and set it gently on the table. "If you ever need anything at all, please call me. We'll handle the rest." With that, he turned to leave, but before he could step away, "Wait," Sam's father called out. Aaron turned around, catching sight of Sam's father as he wiped the tears from his eyes. "The person who did all this, was it that boy we met earlier?" he asked, voice trembling. Beside him, Sam's mother looked confused. The boy who had come to pay his respects, the classmate, they were just kids, both going to the same public school. It didn't make sense. How could it be him? But Sam's father couldn't shake the feeling in his chest. A quiet certainty. After all, this whole meeting, all of it, had only happened because that boy had asked them to listen. Aaron held his gaze for a moment, then offered a soft, knowing smile. "I'll allow you both to believe whatever you wish to believe," he replied, turning back toward the door. "Tell him," Sam's father called out, his voice cracking. "Tell him we said thank you, and that it's not his fault. It was ours." Aaron paused for just a second, the weight of the words settling on him. Then he stepped forward, out into the hall, his mind already racing. "Max, just were you planning? Why go through all this?" At the Stern Manor, Dennis was seated at his desk, going through a stack of files. He personally read each one, sometimes signing them at the bottom with a wet signature. Others, he tore apart and tossed aside without hesitation. Most chairmen of large corporations wouldn't bother handling things so directly, but Dennis was different. He wanted to know every single moving part. "It appears I've just received some news, sir," Fred said, standing by his side and slipping his phone back into his pocket. "News important enough to interrupt me in the middle of all this?" Dennis asked, rubbing his tired eyes. "I need a break anyway, but I hope it's something pleasant." "Pleasant? I'm not so sure about that," Fred replied. "But it's certainly interesting. It's about Max Stern. It seems he's decided to use the money." Dennis froze. Now, that was interesting. Out of all the heirs, Max had always stood out for the simple reason that he was the only one who hadn't touched the money. Until now. However, when Dennis had previously tried to look into Max's behavior, why he hadn't used the money, he came up empty. There was no grand scheme, no elaborate plan. If anything, Dennis had been disappointed. Still, because of the unique situation within the Stern family, Dennis had instructed Fred to monitor any movements closely. And now that there was movement, he was expecting something big. "I've sent the corresponding information to your tablet. Make of it what you will," Fred said. Sitting at the corner of Dennis's desk was a sleek tablet. He didn't always use it, but for things like email or keeping updated on key reports, it came in handy. Situations like this were exactly why he kept it nearby. Opening the file Fred had sent, Dennis scrolled through the digital contract. His expression barely changed, except for a single, curious raise of the eyebrow. "You're right," Dennis finally said. "This is interesting, and it makes absolutely no sense. Buying into a restaurant, and not even a whole thing, just a small percentage. I've tried to piece together how he could possibly use this to his advantage, what kind of angle he's playing, but nothing adds up." Dennis rubbed his temples, then scratched the back of his head as he thought it through a little more. "Keep tracking his financial movements," he finally said. "If he started spending now, it likely means he's planning to spend a lot more soon." His voice dropped slightly as he leaned back in his chair. "But if this is part of some grand ambition, I don't see it going anywhere. He won't become a true heir like this. He'll get eaten alive by the people around him. Frankly, it's disappointing." The rain had cleared up, leaving behind the damp smell of the streets as the trio wandered aimlessly, debating how to spend the rest of their weekend. They tossed around ideas. Maybe the arcade, a visit to the pool hall, or something totally different. As they walked, Joe's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and nearly dropped it. Co glanced over. "What's up? Your mom texted you to come home and scrub the floors, or something?" Joe quickly flipped the phone back around, forcing a weak smile. "Oh no, it's nothing. Don't worry about it." Trying to play it off, he pocketed the phone and added, "Actually, how about we all head home, get changed out of these suits, and meet back up at the arcade? Feels kind of stuffy walking around like this. And honestly a little depressing." Co-eyed Joe for a second, rubbing his chin like he was deep in thought. Yeah, he finally said, nodding. That actually sounds like a good idea. Joe let out a breath of relief, subtle but noticeable. Let's meet up at the arcade by the West Library, he added. With that, the trio agreed and split up, each heading their separate ways. They didn't all live in the same neighborhood, so it wasn't unusual for them to part like this. As soon as he was far enough away, Joe pulled out his phone again, his fingers moving fast to open the message that had nearly made him drop the device earlier. Get the Power Rangers to split up. At first, Joe had been confused. He thought it was about the actual TV show. How am I supposed to break up the Power Rangers? He'd wondered, aren't they, like, all about unity? But then he saw the sender, Max, and it clicked. He's talking about us. Him, Co, and M.O., the little crew of bullies. The Power Rangers. A second message followed, sealing the deal. If you do, I'll add an extra $100 this month. Joe didn't even hesitate. He'd already thought of a solid way to break the group up for a bit, and with that, the job was done. He tapped out a quick reply and sent it back to Max. He wanted us to split up, Joe thought, staring at his phone, a strange chill running down his spine. Why do I have this bad feeling? Did I just do something incredibly stupid? But then he shook it off. Still, it was $100 just for saying a few words. It's not my fault, right? I just said we should go home and get changed. Meanwhile, M.O. was strolling along the quieter streets, far from the busier main roads, happily whistling to himself. He was already pretty close to home, completely relaxed now that the day was over. That was until something slammed into him hard from the side. His body was thrown to the edge of the sidewalk, but he managed to stay on his feet, skidding back a few steps. He spun around, ready to throw hands. What the heck? Who just did that? His scowl quickly morphed into a smug grin when he saw who it was. Max, seriously? M.O. said, rolling his eyes. What is this? You really waited until I was alone to try something? Do you actually think just cause it's one-on-one, you'll stand a chance? Max didn't flinch. His fists clenched, his knuckles whitening as he stared down M.O. with quiet rage. What you said at the funeral, Max muttered, his voice low and sharp. I won't forget it. What? That's what pushed you over the edge. M.O. laughed, loud and mocking. Well, looks like you're trying to make that little funeral wish come true. Showing up here like this. Without waiting another second, M.O. charged at Max, his footsteps loud against the pavement. As soon as he got close, he launched a wild punch, aiming straight for Max's face. Max shifted to the side, dodging it easily, but M.O. followed up with another swing, this time more precise, more forceful. Only it didn't land. Max caught the punch clean in his palm, gripping Mo's fist tightly. Sam tried to help me, Max said, his voice steady but shaking with emotion, even though he didn't really know me. I couldn't help him while he was alive, but I can at least help him this way. Max gripped Mo's fist tightly, his own arm trembling from the strength he was using to hold it in place. What the hell are you doing? Let go. Have you gone crazy? M.O. shouted, panicked now. Just as M.O. reeled his other arm back for a punch, Max struck, his free hand snapping forward in a sharp, heavy slap that cracked across Mo's cheek. The blow was so strong, it left M.O. stunned, his vision wobbling like the world had tilted. Who's going to whose funeral? Max growled. Then, without warning, he brought his knee up and drove it right into the center between Mo's legs. M.O. let out a strangled cry, his body crumpling to the ground in a heap. A blow that could take out Harry Potter, Max muttered coldly. He didn't stop. He raised his hand again and struck M.O. across the face with the back of it, a second slap that sent spit flying from Mo's mouth. What's happening? M.O. groaned, barely able to form the words. His vision was darkening, his lips swelling, his whole body frozen in place. I'm not done, Max snapped. Clenching his fist, he drove it forward, full force into Mo's face. A sickening crunch followed as his knuckles slammed into Mo's nose, sending his head whipping backward. Blood sprayed, and Mo's body hit the ground with a dull thud, completely still. This punishment, the one you used to laugh at, the one you handed out every single day to Sam and Max. This is nothing compared to that. Max shouted, his voice raw with fury. And it was in that moment, M.O. realized he didn't stand a chance. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't even a beating. He wasn't facing the Max he knew. He didn't know who he was up against now. This version of Max was a monster. Panicked, Mo scrambled off the ground and turned to run. But he barely managed 2 steps before Max grabbed him by the collar, yanked him back, and slammed him down hard onto the concrete. "Can you feel it?" Max asked, his voice low and venomous. "Can you feel the pain? Because of you, Sam will never feel this again. He'll never feel anything." Max flipped Mo over and grabbed the tie hanging loosely around his neck, the same one from his funeral suit. In one motion, he wrapped it tight around Mo's throat and started to pull. Mo's hands shot up instantly, clawing at his neck in desperation. He scratched at the tie, at his own skin, his fingers slipping uselessly. His nails tore into his flesh, drawing blood, but he couldn't get under the fabric. He couldn't breathe. And for the rest of their lives, Max seethed, his family will carry this pain you left behind. I'm sorry. Mo barely managed to choke out. Max loosened the tie instantly, and Mo collapsed onto the ground, gasping desperately for air. His chest heaved as if the oxygen was thick and heavy, and his body trembled uncontrollably. His eyes were bloodshot, tears welling at the corners, and his scalp prickled like his head had nearly burst from the pressure just moments ago. "Sorry is just a word," Max said coldly. "It fixes nothing, and you've gone beyond fixing. No apology can undo what you've done." His voice dropped as he reached down. "You wanted to play the wannabe gangster? Then you deal with the consequences." Grabbing the tie that had just nearly choked the life out of Mo, Max wrapped it tight around his knuckles, the fabric biting into his skin. With a single hand, he lifted Mo by the scruff of the neck, like he weighed nothing. "I'd suggest you don't show your face at school on Monday," Max warned, winding his fist back. "No one's going to believe the weak Max Smith was the one who did this to you." Before Mo could plead, before he could say yes or no, Max's fist came flying forward, slamming into the side of his jaw. Mo dropped like a stone, completely unconscious. Max let him fall to the concrete with a heavy thud. His fist still clenched, his breathing steady. He stood over him for a moment longer. Then, without a word, Max turned his back and started walking back toward the funeral service, back toward what was left of the day, back toward Sam. Walking back slowly, Max kept his head down, his thoughts running circles around his mind. He barely noticed where he was going until he bumped into someone solid, like he just walked straight into a wall. "You seem to have a lot on your mind, young master." Looking up, Max saw Aaron standing before him, umbrella still in hand, holding it like it was a part of him. "It's barely raining," Max muttered. "Don't you think your clothes have absorbed enough water for one day?" Aaron replied, his gaze drifting down to Max's knuckles. They were raw, red and scraped. Obvious signs of fight. He's been fighting, Aaron thought. So that look I saw earlier, I was right. But for Max Stern to get personally involved? Then his eyes narrowed slightly. At least he doesn't look injured. If anyone had dared lay a hand on the young master. "Let's go home, Aaron," Max said softly, the weariness in his voice undeniable. "I think I need a rest." "I do have some good news to share," Aaron replied as they began walking. "I've received confirmation. They signed a contract. It seems they decided to place their trust in your words, after all." "Good job. At least the money's being put to some kind of use, right?" Max said, though his voice lacked any real enthusiasm. They walked in silence on the way back to his apartment building. Neither said much, the weight of the day hanging heavy in the air. Aaron didn't know everything about Max's life, but based on what he'd witnessed today, it felt like maybe Max had lost someone close, maybe even a friend from school. Eventually, Aaron gave a small nod and stepped toward the door. "I don't do this often," he said, "but it seems like you'll be staying in your apartment for the rest of the day. I'll take my leave and see you tomorrow." With that, he gently closed the door behind him. Max didn't move for a long while. He stayed in the quiet of his room, staring blankly at the wall. He wasn't in the mood for the gym, not tonight. His body needed a break anyway. His knuckles were still raw, his muscles stiff from the tension. Instead, he picked up his phone. "It's time I stopped messing around," Max muttered under his breath. None of it got me anywhere in the end. Unlocking his screen, he scrolled through the notes until he found the one he was looking for. "I'm going to deal with the first person on this list." His eyes narrowed, full of quiet resolve. Ko, you're up next. The weekend was something many people looked forward to, especially students still stuck in school. It was the only time they truly felt like they had a break, so they made sure to make the most of it. But how that time was spent varied from person to person. For Abby, weekends meant staying at home, playing games and reading stories whenever she could. It was also the only time she allowed herself a sugar rush to satisfy her cravings. Sleep, good food, games, and ending the day with sweet treats and a movie or TV show. That was Abby's perfect weekend. So why was she currently sitting in a coffee shop, staring out at a crowded shopping street filled with all kinds of people? The answer, her dear friend. Please, you have to stop pulling that face when you're with me, Abby, the woman sitting across from her said with a playful eye roll. That woman was Cindy, Abby's best friend. Maybe even her only real-life friend. Cindy had short blonde hair and enough energy to power a small city. She loved going out, keeping up with the latest fashion trends, and diving headfirst into whatever gossip was floating around that week. Some people often wondered how the two of them were even friends. But Abby and Cindy had known each other since kindergarten, and despite being complete opposites, they genuinely enjoyed each other's company. They never judged one another's hobbies and would even join in from time to time just to share a laugh. Come on, Cindy pouted. When we played that cooking game together, I didn't get all sulky with you. That's because you were the one who got way too into it. Abby shot back. You were shouting orders like, cut the lettuce, cook the rice. I mean, who even yells during a cooking game? Right, Cindy sighed, brushing her hair behind her ear. That's why I figured it was better if we headed out today instead. But I guess that's my bad. Buying clothes makes me happy. I should have picked something that makes you happy instead. Then her tone softened. Hey, did you really know Sam that well? At that moment, flashes of memory rushed through Abby's mind. Sam's terrified expression, how hesitant he'd been to tell the teacher what was going on. She still didn't understand why. And now, for this to happen to him? She couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe she could have done more. Maybe she should have talked to Sam about what was going on, but she never did. And now, it felt surreal knowing she'd never get the chance again. He was just gone. I wasn't super close with Sam, Abby admitted, her voice quiet. But I think he was pretty close with Max. Oh, right, Cindy said, perking up. I forgot you and Max used to talk a lot. Didn't you two play that game together all the time? She tapped her finger against her temple like she was trying to pull the memory out, but it never came. Yeah, Abby nodded. But he hasn't been online lately, so I don't really know what's going on with him. We haven't talked much. Honestly, I think that might be a good thing, Cindy replied, slurping the last bit of her drink through the straw. You heard what people are saying, right? That Sam was being bullied, and now they're saying Max is getting it too. She leaned in a bit. Aren't you scared? If people find out the two of you talk, what if they start targeting you as well? Abby didn't hesitate. What? So you think I should abandon someone just because of that? She shot back. Think about how much worse it is for them, being all alone with no one to stand by them. I know you like him. You don't have to keep saying it in such a roundabout way, Cindy said, waving her hand dismissively as she turned to look out the window. Outside, a sleek yellow sports car pulled up to the curb. Its doors lifted upward like wings, and out stepped a man wearing sunglasses and a fancy white shirt that screamed money. On the other side, a woman in a bold red dress climbed out gracefully. You can't help who you fall for, right? Cindy said with a wistful sigh. But if I had one wish, it'd be to end up with someone like that. You know those stories where the normal girl crushes on some guy, and it turns out he secretly owns an entire company or is a prince of some hidden kingdom. Why can't I get that kind of luck? Please, Abby said with a small eye roll. In real life, most princes are over 50, and if you want to talk about CEOs, they're usually even older. Cindy stood up dramatically, clutching her heart. Thanks for destroying my imagination. Maybe I should just do what you do, like someone just because you like them. Did I say I liked him? He's just a friend, Abby replied, her cheeks flushing red as she stood up quickly. The two of them exited the coffee shop, which was connected to a large shopping mall. As they strolled through the mall, it didn't take long before Cindy made a stop at the Banal store. It wasn't like she could afford the bags there, especially at her age, but window shopping and dreaming were part of the experience. Abby trailed behind as Cindy admired the displays, occasionally trying on a bag with stars in her eyes. Eventually, though, she let out a dramatic sigh and placed it back on the shelf, pouting. Maybe one day I'll be able to afford something like this, Cindy said wistfully. Oh, really? A voice came from her right. Cindy's mouth dropped open the moment she turned to see who it was. Standing there was a tall, athletic man with a clean-cut hairstyle and a presence that seemed to light up the store. He was exactly the type of guy Cindy always dreamed about. Really, you'd buy this for me? She asked, blinking in disbelief. But it costs so much. You wouldn't just do that for free, would you? Immediately, Abby rushed in from the side and grabbed her friend by the arm. What are you doing talking to strangers? She hissed through clenched teeth. If some random guy's offering to buy you something that expensive, obviously he's going to want something in return. Two of the man's friends, who were lounging on a nearby sofa inside the store, started to chuckle. Hey, don't take it so seriously, one of them said with an easy grin. He's just being nice. The guy loves helping people out. To him, buying a bag like that is no different than offering someone a stick of gum. Then he leaned in slightly and added, that man right there? That's Danto Stern. Ever heard of them? The Stern family. The Stern family? Abby repeated, narrowing her eyes. And I'm from the IDGF family. Danto raised an eyebrow, clearly confused by the name, until one of his friends stifled a laugh. Cindy, on the other hand, had pieced it together immediately. Oh, the Stern family? That Stern family? Wow, Cindy gasped, clasping her hands together as her eyes practically sparkled. Just moments ago, she felt like Abby had crushed her dreams, saying guys like that didn't exist. But now, one was standing right in front of her, breathing, speaking, offering designer bags like they were no big deal. Thanks to her deep dives into fashion blogs and the Borb's rich lists, she knew exactly who the Sterns were. Wait, so you really do have that kind of money? Cindy asked, already pulling the bag from the shelf. And you're saying you'll buy this for me? Just like that. Of course I don't mind, Danto said smoothly, leaning casually against the wall, his tight shirt stretching just enough to flex his muscles. Abby watched him with a deadpan stare. Seriously, could this guy have picked a tighter shirt? I wasn't expecting anything in return, Danto added with a wink. But if you wanted to leave me your number, I wouldn't be mad about it. His friends, still lounging on the nearby couches, let out a few chuckles. Unbelievable. Every time, one of them said. As soon as they hear who he is, they're practically throwing their numbers at him. His superpower isn't strength or speed, the other added with a smirk. It's his bank account and that last name. Cindy, seriously, let's go. Abby said, tugging her friend gently by the arm. You're the one who told me that guys like this never end up with regular people. They date celebrities, influencers, other millionaires. Do you really think someone hanging out in the girls section of a luxury shop, hitting on random people, is doing this for love? Come on, snap out of it. Cindy blinked, glancing around. Now that Abby mentioned it, yeah. The section they were in was filled with handbags, heels, and chic dresses. It made no sense for a guy like him to be browsing here, unless he was shopping for someone else. And now that she really thought about it, he'd been standing there for a while, watching, waiting. He hadn't just randomly bumped into her. Do you people have to get involved? Danto finally said, a little irritation slipping into his voice. And this time, his eyes were locked directly on Abby. Oh, I get it now, Danto said, his voice laced with smugness. You're upset because I hit on your friend instead of you. No need to drag her away, just to show how jealous you are. And just like that, the scowl shifted from Abby's face to Cindy's. Excuse me, Cindy snapped. My friend isn't jealous. Who do you think you are, acting like everyone automatically likes you? For a second, it actually looked like she was going to slap him right across the face. Abby knew this would happen. Drama always followed guys like this. But it was one of the things she loved about Cindy. No matter what, she always had Abby's back. She was the kind of friend who'd throw hands before letting anyone disrespect her. Wow, turns out you're both walking red flags, Danto muttered, shaking his head. Glad I didn't waste my money on you. Might as well have set it on fire. The two girls turned to leave, brushing past the sneering group. But just before crossing the threshold, Abby paused, her frustration boiling over. She spun on her heel and looked Danto dead in the eye. Right. Big proud man, huh? Flashing daddy's money around to impress a bunch of students. Buying things with cash you didn't even earn. Try learning how to handle rejection, jerk. And with that, she turned back around, walking off with Cindy by her side. Huh? Cindy burst out laughing as the two of them continued walking down the street. That was so good. But the thing about the Stern family, it's not even their dads. They're all just leeching off their grandpa's money. Cindy made sure to say the last part loud enough for the guys to hear, her voice carrying as they strolled away, still laughing. Behind them, the boys weren't taking it nearly as well. Oh man, one of Danto's friends chuckled. That's got to be the biggest rejection I've ever seen. Yeah, and he was so sure he had it in the bag, the other added, snorting. But while they laughed, Danto's jaw clenched. His face was turning red, not from embarrassment but rage. Those damn ugly bitches, Danto hissed. And I was actually trying to be nice. I offered to buy them something, and I'm the one who gets humiliated? Still fuming, he yanked out his phone and tapped the screen. It rang twice before someone picked up on the other end. I need you to rough a couple people up for me. Meanwhile, the two girls continued down the sidewalk, the shopping bags swinging at their sides. After the strange encounter, they decided it was probably best to call it a day and head home. They were just about to head for the bus stop when a group of men and women suddenly appeared in front of them. Their appearance was rough, hoodies pulled low over their faces, baggy clothes hanging loose, each one giving off an unsettling vibe. Abby instinctively turned around, but her heart sank the moment she saw 3 more people standing behind them. All of them were large, intimidating. You two move, one of the men said, pulling a sharp object from a hidden pouch slung around the side of his neck. If you scream, shout, or try to run, then you'll be dealing with this. And trust me, it's a lot worse than whatever we've got planned for you. Abby could feel her heartbeat pounding in her ears, heat rushing to her face. Her entire body was tense, but more than anything, she could feel Cindy trembling beside her. Don't worry, we'll be okay. We'll be okay. Abby whispered, unsure if the word were meant to calm Cindy down or herself. With no other option, the two of them started walking forward into the alleyway. 3 figures led the way, and 3 stayed behind, boxing them in completely. There was no chance of escape. As they continued forward, a sudden grunt echoed from behind them. Ag, one of the men yelled. What do you think you're doing? Another voice shouted, followed by a loud thud. Cindy, Abby, and the 3 attackers in front all turn around, just in time to see a lone figure standing over the bodies of the 3 who had been tailing them. One man remained upright, but it was clear he'd taken them all out. What the heck? Who are you, kid? One of the men in front shouted. Without another word, the 3 lunged at him, completely forgetting about Abby and Cindy. The first attacker pulled out a knife, but in one clean motion, it was slapped straight out of his hand. A powerful punch followed, square to the face, dropping him instantly. The second man tried to tackle the stranger, but the stranger grabbed him mid-charge, lifted him off the ground, and slammed him to the pavement with a sickening crack. With 5 attackers down, the last one froze for a second, then bolted down the alley, sprinting away as fast as his legs could carry him. You two, get out of here. Now, the stranger said, his voice firm but calm. Abby and Cindy didn't need to be told twice. They rushed past him, sprinting down the alley and back toward the high street. Their hearts were pounding as they ran all the way to the bus stop, where the sight of a crowd finally made them stop and breathe. That was way too close, Cindy panted, hands on her knees. What has happened? Why did they even attack us? I don't know, Abby said, her voice still shaking. But after that, I'm definitely not going out again for a while. She glanced down the street behind them, still on edge. Who was that guy, the one who helped us? Cindy had just managed to catch her breath when a memory clicked. Wait, I think I saw his face when we ran past him. I'm pretty sure he's someone from our school. Jay Woods, that's his name, right? One of the delinquents who always hangs around with Dipter. Abby's brows furrowed. We were saved by one of the school delinquents. The whole situation was unreal. The more she thought about it, the more this town just didn't make sense. Well, if we see him tomorrow, Cindy said, still trying to process everything, We should at least say thank you. I guess we kind of owe him one now. The day after Sam's funeral, Sunday, Max realized he needed to start preparing for the worst when school started again. He had given in to his anger and attacked Mo earlier than he had planned. There was a decent chance he'd done enough to keep Mo from telling anyone else, but there was still a possibility that word had spread. If the entire school knew what happened, that would be a serious problem for a lot of reasons. Originally, his goal had been simple: to figure out why the real Max Stern never touched the money. With that kind of wealth, he could have easily put a stop to the bullying, hired someone, paid the others off, maybe even transferred to a new school altogether. But he hadn't done any of those things, and Max was still nowhere closer to figuring out why. On top of that, he'd only uncovered 2 names from the list so far. The first was Ko, the self-declared leader of their classroom, and the one responsible for most of the torment aimed at both Max and Sam. The second was Dipter, apparently the top delinquent in the entire school. He was the one giving orders, the one even Ko answered to. The real problem was this school wasn't just any regular public school. It was crawling with more scum than most. That explained why no one ever stepped in during the chaos that unfolded in the classroom. Nearly all the boys in class were delinquents. They listened to Ko. Some greeted him like a friend, others just followed his lead. Sure, it was the main trio that acted like they ran the place, but the rest weren't exactly innocent. They went along with it, and that was just as bad. A lot of this I found out through text with Joe, Max thought, confirming what he had already suspected. Basically, if Max ever made a public move against Dipter or Ko, it'd be like declaring war on the entire school. Even if, in the past, he could have taken on 100 students at once, that wasn't true anymore, not in this body. Things would be so much easier if I still had the white tiger backing me like I used to, Max thought. Then again, there's always the option of handling things outside of school. On weekends, Aaron is around to protect me. That could be a way to get him involved without directly asking for help. If random students started attacking me, Aaron would have no choice but to step in, right? That's literally his job. The problem was tomorrow was school, and everything could change in the blink of an eye. Max could feel the tension crawling in his fingers, like they were itching for something to do. He'd already made up his mind. He needed to stay sharp for whatever was coming. That's why he texted Steven and asked him to open up the gym. He'd rested yesterday. Today, he needed to move. As he walked, his thoughts kept spinning. How do I isolate Ko? Take him out without Dipter ever knowing? Max wondered, could I bring him to my side like I did with Joe? But then that thought twisted in his stomach. He remembered everything Ko had done to Sam. According to Joe, nearly all of it had been Ko's idea. Luring someone in, rewarding them with money. It made Max feel sick just thinking about it. Sir, are you sure this is the right place? Aaron asked, standing at the front of the gym. The metal shutter was still pulled down, leaving nothing but the cold exterior in view. Yes, Max replied plainly. And you said you wouldn't bother me with questions if I brought you along. It was Sunday, after all, which meant Aaron had to stay by his side, no exceptions. And that's exactly why he was there now. When Steven showed up in his signature red tracksuit, he was more than a little surprised to see someone else standing next to the kid. Oh, you brought someone with you? Steven asked, raising an eyebrow. He doesn't look like your dad or your brother. Is he a new customer? Calm down, Max replied, brushing past. He's just here to keep an eye on me. Steven quickly unlocked the metal shutter, and once the two of them stepped inside, it slammed closed behind them. Max didn't waste any time. He headed straight to his usual spot, already moving through his routine like muscle memory. He didn't say another word. That left Steven and Aaron standing awkwardly near the front desk together. Well, this is weird, Steven thought, glancing sideways. Why am I the one getting all shy? This is my gym. The silence hung for a bit, but both men eventually turned their attention to Max. Aaron's eyes narrowed with interest, focused entirely on the boy. He watched as Max wrapped up his hands, approached one of the heavy bags, and started throwing punches, clean, sharp strikes followed by solid combinations. From the look of it, Aaron could tell. Max wasn't new to this. Either he'd been training for a while, or he'd done this kind of thing before. Hey, so, are you like his guardian or something? Steven eventually found the nerve to ask, rubbing the back of his neck. Or maybe, judging by the way you're standing there, you're some kind of bodyguard? I'm not at liberty to say, Aaron replied smoothly, his arms crossed behind his back. But for now, you can consider me his guardian. Stephen curled his lip slightly. What kind of answer is that? He thought. If you say something like that, you're basically yelling, I'm a bodyguard. He glanced at Max again, watching him land another solid punch on the bag. A rich kid like that. Makes sense he'd have someone with him. Guess this guy's the reason Max knows how to throw a punch. Oddly enough, at that very moment, Aaron was having similar thoughts, just in reverse. His eyes scanned the photos that lined the wall behind the front desk. Medals, trophies, shots of Stephen in the ring. The man clearly had a history in professional fighting. I wonder how long Max has been coming here. Aaron thought, arms still folded tightly. He's probably the one teaching Max how to fight. Both of them were completely off the mark, but equally convinced they had it figured out. In the middle of his training, Max wiped some sweat from his forehead and walked over to the two men. It felt a little early for Max to be wrapping up his training, so both men glanced at each other, wondering what he was coming over for. What came next, though, completely caught them off guard. Do you think, Max said, stopping in front of them and wiping the sweat from his brow, you two would be up for fighting each other? While Max had been in the middle of his training, he couldn't help but glance repeatedly at the two adults standing near the front of the gym. He was deep in thought, already planning how best to use the both of them in his future endeavors. Right now, he was tangled in the mess of Max's life, sorting out the chaos that had spiraled too far. But once that was over, there was still something far more dangerous waiting for him, the White Tiger Gang. Taking them on wouldn't be something he could handle alone. He understood the value of a reliable crew, people he could trust at his back. The problem was he didn't know the true strength of the two standing near him. So he was trying to come up with a way to gauge them, test their abilities without making it obvious. That led him to getting up and asking a question. Hey kid, what do you think you're saying? Stephen said, raising a brow. I know you probably grew up with a silver spoon in your mouth, but you can't just tell two adults to fight like we're your entertainment. I'll give you an extra 1,000 if you fight him, Max replied coolly. In a flash, Stephen was already in the ring, cracking his knuckles and starting to warm up. Young master, are you certain you want me to do this? Aaron asked, calmly pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. You're supposed to be the head of my personal security, aren't you? Max replied, every now and then, it makes sense to test just how strong my security really is. Just pretend he's trying to attack me. Aaron's face twitched with clear reluctance, but he didn't question the order. He stepped forward, bent between the ropes, and entered the ring. It looked like a strange setup, one man dressed in a red tracksuit, hands wrapped, lightly shadowboxing in the corner, and the other standing stiff in a full black suit like he was about to present a company pitch, not throw a punch. All right, Max called out. The fight ends when one of you gets knocked out or gives up. And to keep things interesting, whoever wins gets an extra 1,000. Yes, sir, Stephen shouted immediately, practically bouncing on his feet. Max could already tell if there was an easy way to control Stephen, it was definitely through cash. What surprised him more was that Aaron didn't even flinch at the mention of money. He figured that meant Aaron's salary from his grandfather had to be pretty impressive because it clearly wasn't the money that motivated him. Now this should be interesting, Max thought, a smirk curling on his lips. One's a professional boxer, the other is the head of a private security team. Honestly, hard to say who's going to come out on top. He leaned forward slightly, enjoying the suspense before giving the signal. Fight! As soon as the word left his mouth, Stephen sprang into action. He launched forward with quick footwork, his form sharp and practiced, keeping a tight, professional stance. I'm not going to go easy on you, Stephen shouted, eyes locked in. Neither am I, Aaron replied smoothly. But something was off. Stephen noticed it right away. Aaron's stance wasn't typical. It was nothing like a trained boxer or even a brawler. Instead, he moved in an odd, almost tactical rhythm, his hand reaching for something near his waist. Wait, is that a... Whack! A metal baton extended from Aaron's hand and cracked hard across Stephen's face. The boxer dropped instantly, collapsing to the floor with a thud. And Aaron wasn't done. He calmly pulled another small device from his belt and pressed it to Stephen's neck. A sharp buzz filled the air as the stun gun jolted through Steven's body, making his limbs twitch and spasm uncontrollably. After a few seconds, Aaron stood tall, clicked off the device, and straightened his tie. He turned to Max with a smug, satisfied expression. "The threat has been eliminated, young master," Aaron said proudly, as if expecting Max to clap for him. Instead, Max just stood there, frozen in disbelief. "What was that?" he snapped. "I wanted to see how strong you both were in an actual fight. Not whatever that was." Aaron, completely unfazed, responded calmly, "Sir, if it had been a real threat, that is exactly how I would have handled it. The quickest and most efficient way to neutralize danger. No one in their right mind fights barehanded if they don't have to." Max let out a long sigh and shook his head. Well, that was the end of that experiment. Steven definitely wasn't in any shape to fight again, not after getting zapped into the floor, and Max wasn't too keen on watching Aaron go full cyborg mode again anytime soon. So, the gym session ended early. Max even agreed to cover any medical expenses, if there were any. The weekend, full of chaos and unexpected turns, finally came to a close. Max said his goodbyes to Aaron and braced himself for what was coming next. School. Back into the lion's den. The next morning, Max woke up early. He was sharp, focused, dressed, and ready to go. He didn't know what the day would throw at him, but this time, he'd be cautious. This time, he was ready. Walking into the school, the same heavy, suffocating air still clung to the halls. The weight of what had happened to Sam hadn't vanished. It hadn't even been that long. Still, Max noticed a few things. As he made his way through the corridors, he caught glimpses of the old habits returning. In other classrooms, the delinquents were starting up again. Minor bullying here, cruel jokes there. Slowly but surely, the school was forgetting. Forgetting Sam. Forgetting the pain. And soon, everything would slip right back to the way it was before. This place seriously needs to be fixed, Max thought as his jaw clenched. Kids shouldn't be living like this. No wonder more and more of them end up going down the same dark road I did. He reached his classroom. As he stepped inside, the usual noise greeted him: chatter, laughter, desks scraping against the floor. Everyone was in their spots. Joe sat off to the side, quietly tucked in his usual corner. But Max immediately picked up on something else, and Mo wasn't there. That was rare. Still, Co sat at his normal place, leaning back and chatting with Joe like nothing had changed. As Max moved to his desk, he felt it. The sharp, darting stares, especially from Co. But it wasn't just him. Several others in the room were watching him too. Max didn't flinch. He just kept walking, eyes forward. As Max made his way to his desk, his eyes drifted to the one next to his, Sam's old seat. What is that? He thought, narrowing his eyes. There was something off. Stepping closer, Max's stomach turned. Black marker was scrawled all over the surface of Sam's desk. Mean, cruel words etched into the wood like a twisted memorial. "I hope there's lots of bacon for you up there. I heard they mistook him for an animal at the hospital at first. Always trying to get attention, even in death. Rip pig." Max's grip on the desk tightened, his knuckles widening. Rage bubbled up from deep inside, and just as his breath grew sharp and shallow, he heard footsteps approaching behind him. Slive, one of the regulars. He wasn't part of the main trio, but he always tagged along, throwing in his insults when it suited him. "Haha, look at that." Slive laughed, stopping next to Max with a smirk. "Man, those are some good ones, right, Max?" He reached out and tapped Max on the back of the head twice. On the third tap, Max snapped. His hand shot up, grabbing Slive's wrist mid-swing and twisting it sharply. Slive let out a sharp yelp of surprise, but Max didn't let go. Not yet. Max's foot slammed into the side of Slive's leg, sweeping it out from under him and sending him crashing to the floor. Still gripping his wrist, Max didn't let up. "I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it all," Max growled, his voice low and trembling with fury. With his free hand, he reached for Slive's fingers and yanked. A sharp crack echoed through the classroom, silencing the murmurs and laughter in an instant. "I'm going to break the hands of every single person who wrote on this damn desk," he shouted, his eyes wild, voice trembling not from fear, but from rage that had been simmering for far too long.